Nice to see you. It's been a long time. Do I get a hug?
Open the magic door there. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
How are you? It's been a long
Really
time.
I know. It's been like 2009 or something.
Yes. Ages.
I know.
But I've stayed the same.
Yes, you
look
have.
fantastic.
Oh, thank you. You look great. And Marilyn Williams. I'm so glad you're with us. She's really good. Just so detailed. Hi, sweetie. How are you? Lovely. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome. We're making progress, huh?
Can you believe we did this? Do you remember? You came to meet with us, and who would
It's
think?
Andy Jordan.
So I'm Andy.
You don't look like it for some reason. I don't know why. I
I'm
have
still Andy.
facial.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I
Can
know.
you believe this?
Here we are.
Hi, this is Steve.
Hi, Steve. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
This is Evan. You're live on the call. We haven't started yet.
Great. I'm calling from a landline. I've had some problems with my cell phone, but let's call that not really relevant. So to get on the to observe the meeting, do I just go to the Santa Clara County website and hook up as if I were going to a Board of Suits meeting?
I believe so, yes. You should be able to do it that way. Otherwise, you might just have to follow along. We're just using the agenda packet as the projected up on the screen.
Oh, you mean there won't be video of watching people and all that stuff?
There is video. It's on the.
Make sure he knows that he's being broadcast all over.
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
It's on which? Where is it at?
Let me see if they sent it to me yet. Here we go, I got it. Steve, if I forward it to you in an email, is that all right?
Perfect.
Okay. I can add them to the website right now. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Steve, you may want to put it on mute for a little bit.
Can you hear me moving about?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. My phone isn't that sophisticated. How about if I just am quiet? Unbelievably quiet.
Probably public comment if it's specific to an actual agenda item. So it's just.
About the, this is about the,
Toward the end of the meeting?
they've not got back to me.
Unless it's specific.
Yeah, no, I'm in South San Jose and a lot of flights are coming over.
Yeah, so we're not talking specifically about it.
Yeah, I can. No, it hasn't been on my radar, so they obviously haven't brought it.
Good. I'll check just in case, but
Well, I will check.
every time I'm coming here, it's like, what do I do? What's
That's
going
right,
on?
that's
I've
right.
been gone for 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, and, yeah, just keeping all the pieces, well, you're literally and figuratively, keeping all the planes in the air. That's,
Andy, are you hearing noise from me now?
Yes.
great, yeah, thank you.
It must be my phone because I
So I will
really don't.
definitely look
Just don't go into the bathroom, okay?
close the loop. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
And I am available with my personal cell for texting if you hear something that you shouldn't.
Yes, I can text you. But we can still hear you.
I literally am not making a sound, so you shouldn't hear anything but my voice.
Steve, can you hear me? Do you need me to be on the mic for you to hear me?
I can hear you now. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm going off the mic and I'm going to try it without.
Okay.
Okay, we're on mic then. We'll be on mic. Bye for now.
Okay.
Hi, Karen, we can hear you. You can go ahead and mute your phone if you'd like.
Thank you.
Welcome, Karen.
So if you have a speaker card, you can place it in the box over here, and then we'll sort it. I'll pass it up to the front. Thank you.
Karen and Steve, I've just uploaded a link to the website. Karen, I'll also send you the link for the live stream.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Has the meeting started?
No, the meeting has not started.
Oh, thank God.
I think you have a quorum, though.
I don't see it live yet.
What don't you see?
I don't see it live yet. I see the Joker from a Batman movie.
Okay, well, maybe they're waiting for us to start.
Gotta think that's not Steve.
And with that signal, I'm going to call the meeting to order. If we could return to our seats, that would be great. And I welcome you all to the August 28th, 2019 Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Counties Airport Roundtable. I would like, starting on my right, please, for the roundtable members to identify themselves and the city that they're representing. Thank you. Kathy, first.
Okay, Kathy Watanabe, council member for the city of Santa Clara.
Ed Bodorf, City Council, Capitola.
Michelle Wu, Los Altos Hill.
Carlos Palacios, Santa Cruz County.
Lisa Matichak, Mayor, City of Mountain View.
Mary Lynn Bernald, City of Saratoga, and Chair of the Roundtable.
Steve Alverson, Environmental Science Associates, ESA. I'm the Roundtable Facilitator.
Liz Lawler, City of Montecito.
It's red when it's on.
There we go. Stephen Scharf, Mayor of Cupertino.
Lydia Cruz, City of Palo Alto, Council Member.
Thank you.
We also have Steve Preminger on the phone as well, and he is a voting member. We have noticed that.
Representing the county of
Yes.
Santa Clara. And I jumped the gun, so I will get back to the rest of the introductions after we have an opening statement from Steve Alverson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, good afternoon and welcome to the August 28th, 2019 Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Counties Airport Community Roundtable meeting here in San Jose. As I mentioned, I'm Steve Alverson with Environmental Science Associate, also known as ESA. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the facilitator of this roundtable. Out of respect for everyone's time, one of my roles is to keep the roundtable discussions on topic and within the time allotted on our agenda. Therefore, I may interrupt conversation and discussion to keep us all on track. I'm also going to insist that the member discussion and input from the public be respectful to each other, and in particular to our colleagues from the Federal Aviation Administration. Everyone at this meeting here is an advocate for minimizing aircraft noise impacts. Therefore, we have no adversaries in this room today. The roundtable provides a collaborative forum within which aircraft noise concerns can be discussed and recommendations can be forwarded to the FAA for other considerations and others for consideration. This collaboration is most productive in a collegial and respectful environment. Abusive or demeaning behavior will not be tolerated. You'll note that time has been allotted on the agenda for public comment, which is intended to provide the public an opportunity to share their concerns with the roundtable members for their consideration. Due to the Brown Act, the roundtable is unable to take actions at this meeting on new items raised during the public comment period. And this is going to be a change from my previous preamble, so pay attention. If you wish to address the roundtable, please fully complete one of these speakers' card, noting the agenda number of the item that you wish to address. That helps us, really guides the way in which we set the cards up. Provide your completed cards to Evan over there with his hands raised, or put it in that little basket. Evan will then hand those to Andy Jordan, who is here, and Andy will bring them to Chair Bernald. Please don't come up here and bring them to us, as it actually messes the entire process up when we're receiving cards during the process. Andy and Evan will be there to help us. Depending on the number of speakers that we have, the chair may reduce the amount of time allocated to each speaker in order to stay within the schedule. For example, if we have 10 minutes allocated for public comment period and we have 10 speakers, then each speaker will be limited to 1 minute. I thank you all for adhering to this limit, and Madam Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Steve. I will echo everything he says and point out that our meeting time is from 1 to 3 p.m. To date, we have not succeeded in meeting at 3 p.m., but we can all do our part to try and aim for that. So I would appreciate that all of us keep that in mind. Going along with introductions, I'm going to go from sweep right to left again. Evan Wasserman is here from ESA, again, getting any speaker slips that you may want to submit. And we have Fabi Garcia here from the FAA, and you have some new individuals here today, so I'll leave it to you to introduce, please.
I do. Thank you. Am I live? Yeah, thank you. So thank you very much for the introductions. Here with me, I have Adam Vetter. Adam is the team lead for the analytics team, and he reports to Sean Kozika. You may recall Sean participated with us in June and promised that we would have technical support every other month, and so that's why he is here to present. Also with us, I'd like to welcome Sky Laron, who is one of our newest members. He's the Community Engagement Officer assigned to the Western Service Center, more the air traffic side. He will be working along with the rest of the Community Engagement Officers, to include Will Freeman, that you met last month. And we'll hear more from them as they present later today.
And we understand that Will Freeman isn't here today because there was a schedule conflict at the last minute.
Correct. We are still trying to figure out participation and how many people we're going to have at every meeting. Sky is going to be the primary community engagement officer. Will is the alternate for this particular roundtable. And as far as today is concerned, there was a conflict, and he is working on another roundtable in Southern California.
Welcome, Sky. Also, welcome, Adam. Kathleen? Yes.
Sure. Kathleen Lee, District Director for Congressman Jimmy Panetta.
And Tom?
And Tom Pike from Congressman Ro Khanna's office.
And Bert?
Bert Ganang, SFO Airport Community Roundtable representative, but also the manager of the Aircraft Noise Abatement Office.
Wonderful. Thank you. Glad to have you all here today.
There we are.
Karen Chapman is also on the phone listening in. Thank you for phoning in, Karen. Thank you very much for calling in. And I also have the honor of introducing Elizabeth Lewis, who is the chair of the San Francisco Roundtable, who is attending today in the audience. So with that, I would like to move forward. At the heart of our our roundtable meeting today is presentations from the FAA to start off with. And so I will introduce the FAA and let them figure out who's going to speak. We have items having to do with the letter to the FAA regarding the roundtable questions on Loop 5 and Pirate 2 flight procedures. We also have a letter in May regarding the roundtable questions on Loop 5 and Pirate 2 procedures. And then thirdly, we have the FAA's May 2019 response to recommendations from the San Jose Airport Ad Hoc Advisory Committee on South Flow Arrivals. You also, Fabi, have sent in, as of last night, more responses, and they have been handed out to us at our individual tables. We processed them as fast as we could not get them into our packet, but they should be at the table for everyone. And if you need to discuss those, please do that. The format that I would like to have, and I hope Adam will agree with, is we will give him an opportunity to make the presentation. Keep the questions to yourselves if you do. Normally, if you have questions with the presentation, roundtable members, ask them after the presentation unless you really have something that you just don't understand. And then once we have had our first go-round of questions, I will open it up to public comment, and then we will close that and then go back to any discussions if need be. Thank you.
If I can start briefly, as far as the correspondence is concerned, I just want to remind everybody that it is always best to send the correspondence, address it to Raquel Gervin through you. Mary Lynn, please. As you know, some of the letters were sent to the acting administrator and they were eventually reassigned to us, and therefore we have the final products as of Friday. I believe they were signed, and I forwarded them to you as quickly as possible. So I appreciate you disseminating those as well. Also, before we get started, I'm going to ask Sky would like to address the group briefly before Adam goes into the presentation, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
Hello. Hello. Good afternoon, Chairperson Bernald, county and city officials. Quickly, before we dive into the technical discussion surrounding your questions, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sky Laron, and I'm going to be the new community engagement representative assigned to Northern California. I will work closely with this group here and the FAA's Regional Administrator's Office, as well as the technical team, which I'm embedded with at the FAA Western Service Center headquarters. This is my first roundtable, and I'm eager to see how this works and how I can best integrate myself into this process. Our technical analytics team is headed up by Adam Vetter on my left, who will speak to you shortly. Adam is an air traffic controller by trade. Air traffic controllers make up the lion's share of the FAA's workforce with the sole purpose of keeping the American flying public safe. Controllers do this through separation of roughly 43,000 aircraft on a daily basis. This is an intense job that requires extreme focus. I'm glad we have Adam here today to speak with us and can help explain what's going on in the skies overhead. There is no easy solution to address aircraft noise. As we know, the benefits of having a public airport in our community comes with certain trade-offs. Although these airports often predate the communities that now surround them, the reality is clear. It will take everyone involved to find acceptable measures to lessen the impacts created by aircraft noise. I look forward to working with you, and on that note, I'd like to hand it over to Adam.
Thank you, Sky, and thank you, Chairwoman Bernald. In the interest of time, I'd like to combine the two responses into one, the April 10th letter and the May 13th letter, and then just generally answer each of the questions as we go through those. There are several questions that request information and documents, and I'd like to skip those as those were distributed via email last night, and the roundtable members should have copies of all those. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started into this. The three main topics are the loop instrument departure procedure and the pirate arrival route, as well as some other questions regarding the PBN or .41 process as we refer to that, and so I'll go over that briefly. Why was the Loop 4 instrument departure procedure replaced? And Evan, if you can do the next slide. That one right there. On the left, you'll see the previous Loop 4 instrument departure procedure, and on the right, it's the Loop 5 instrument departure procedure. The Loop 5 is an improvement from a safety aspect of air traffic control. Routinely, almost routinely, aircraft and pilots were confusing that bold line that originates from the San Jose navigational aid that is on the ground, and they'd make an inadvertent turn to the left instead of continuing the loop, basically a counter or a clockwise turn over the airport, over the San Jose area. The Loop 5 departure is an improvement as it adds a segment past that radial, or the 340-degree radial that goes up to Boomerang, Waypoint, or intersection, and then adds a waypoint called Blanche. And what that does is it adds a defined route where the aircraft continue past that and continue that clockwise turn, or the loop, which is the genesis of the name of the departure procedure. So that is why the Loop 4 has been replaced by the Loop 5. And again, like I said, I'll generally answer these questions. That answers question 1 and 2. The environmental analysis was evaluated for the Loop 5, just as we do, not quite there, just as we do with all instrument flight procedures and any changes to the National Airspace System. Pursuant to FAA Order 1050.1F, the FAA evaluated the proposed action, and a categorical exclusion was issued for the Loop 5 departure procedure. And as I said, for question 4, that is a request for a copy of that CADEX or categorical exclusion, and the council members or the roundtable members should have that in the packet of email there. The FAA's process for developing a new replacement arrival or departure procedure, and I believe that was briefed at the last roundtable meeting by Ms. Garcia and Sean Kazika, basically what we call the .41 process, or the performance-based navigation procedure development process. It's a 5-step process that I have a Gantt chart that I'll review again at the end of the presentation. Question 8, the request was regularly updating the Santa Cruz, Santa Clara roundtable, as well as other roundtables on future proposed procedures within the airspace. And again, we'd like to refer the members, as well as members of the public, to refer to the Instrument Flight Procedures Gateway, where anybody can sign up for notifications for any airport that they'd like to select. And by there's where we post updates to the procedures as they are developed and as they flow through the development process there. Next one. Oh, I'm sorry, still on that one. There was a question that requests a depiction of the Loop 5 departure over the ground that depicts the communities that will be overflown and the relevant changes in flight track locations, aircraft altitudes, aircraft noise exposure, and also on the ground. That map was provided during the May 22nd meeting, and the San Jose Airport can also provide local information as far as aircraft operations local to the San Jose Airport and area. As far as maps that depict procedures and the noise exposure over the ground, the FAA does not use ground-based monitoring to validate flight procedures or to validate the noise screening that we use during our environmental review. Noise monitoring such as that is established through the airports, and I'd like to refer members of the roundtable and the public to the San Jose Airport or any airport that they'd like to explore establishment of that system or the ground-based monitoring. Next one for Pirate. On the Pirate 2-star, there was implemented due to a select committee recommendation to keep aircraft at 8,000 feet MSL, or mean sea level, over the Woodside VOR. The Pirate Star, or standard terminal arrival route, applies to oceanic arrivals for San Francisco and Oakland airports that were previously brought in one of 2 ways: via private tailored arrival or a private arrival route, such as this one that was made public, or via ATC individual instructions across the Pirate waypoint and subsequently to Woodside VOR, similar to the San Jose VOR. It's a ground-based navigational aid. After that, air traffic control would vector or assign a specific route to intercept an approach procedure or vector for visual approach into one of the airports in the Bay Area. The Pirate arrival route basically proceduralizes that and adapts or establishes a route from Pirate Waypoint to what we call ARG Waypoint. And due to criteria, we could not place ARG Waypoint in the exact location of the Woodside VOR. However, they are within 100 feet of each other. And to that point, the crossing restriction at ARG Waypoint, which is essentially over OSI or Woodside VOR, is 8,000 feet, which meets the recommendations of the Select Committee. Moving on to question 6, how aircraft will be routed after leaving ARG Waypoint. This is no different than how they were routed before. After ARG Waypoint, like I said, the aircraft will be vectored or assigned a same heading or route to intercept an approach procedure or visual approach to one of the airports that the arrival route serves. That same thing answers question 7. Record of decision dates for Pirate 1 and 2 stars. The FAA signed the record of decision or ROD for the Pirate 1 star on July 17th. A CADX was not issued for the Pirate 2 star as the FAA corrected a charting error which applied the crossing at or below 15,000 or 15,000 feet at the Pirate Waypoint, which is over water. And then moving on to 9 and 10. Question 9 again refers to the DOT 41 or the Performance-Based Navigation Procedure Development Process, and that is what we use to develop and track the success of the Pirate 2 star. The noise impact for the Pirate 2 star, the change from the Pirate 2 or 1, was over the water and should not, or typically does not, impact noise or people on the ground. Moving on, and as I repeated before, after ARG Waypoint, or what was Woodside VOR or OSI as it was known before, the aircraft are treated and controlled just like they were before these procedures were implemented and again updated.
Excuse me, I'm really sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
Chair, can you please point us toward the document with the question list to which he's referring? What is the name of the document, please?
It's an address to me, Mary Lynn Bernald. It's from the FAA. It's a very thick packet. The beginning sentence is, "Thank you for your letters dated April 10th, May 13th." And it was
This
stamped
is one of the
August
letters that you
27th.
distributed last night?
Yes, so this is something that was placed on our places this morning.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Go ahead.
Of course, thank you. To Fabi's point before, we did, and yours as well, Madam Chair, we did distribute or send the emails to several other responses as well as this one into the email. We do have one outstanding letter that we anticipate being sent back very shortly to the roundtable as well. Moving to question 14, the likelihood that the Pirate 2 star will be vectored either up or down the San Francisco Peninsula. Prior to the implementation of the Pirate Star, oceanic arrivals arriving over Woodside, not on the tailored arrival, would depart Woodside at on a 060 heading at 8,000 feet. Air traffic control would then assign radar vectors to the assigned instrument approach. The Pirate Star has not changed this other than Woodside being replaced by ARG Waypoint. After ARG Waypoint, the aircraft are treated just like they were before. And again, the question 15, to summarize the document or to round out the document, please provide the Cruz Santa Clara Roundtable with the environmental analysis. And as it says there, we did add the CADX for the Pirate 1 star, and it explains the Pirate 2 change and the difference between those. So I know you'd like to save questions. I do have the third document, a third topic, which is a little bit separate. Would you like to hold questions to the end for all three of those?
If you don't mind, I think while we're
Absolutely.
talking Loop and Pirate, we'll ask questions now.
Absolutely.
And we'll go this time from my left, Lydia, and then on and move forward. I don't mean to call you out if you have questions regarding Loop and Pirate in this presentation.
I always have questions.
I know.
Thank you. So thank you for that report. So the Select Committee asked for Woodside VOR at 8,000 feet. It did not ask for Pirate, and it did not ask for more aircraft. The FAA has stated we anticipate more aircraft will likely use Pirate in its February letter to Palo Alto. Given the FAA's policies not to move noise from over one community to another in order to alleviate noise issues, how do we get the pirate implementation that's moving noise from one community to another?
As far as the specific analysis of the tailored arrival versus the pirate arrival and how that moved noise from one community to another, I'm not familiar with that. That is something that can be subject to another question and further analysis for a deeper answer into that. As far as the select committee recommendations, that was shared with the select committee, the crossing Woodside VOR, which had to be changed to ARC waypoint at 8,000 feet.
So if I might ask, Chair, if you would put that question down in order for further exploration, because obviously our communities do feel that there is a shift in noise, shift in aircraft procedures.
If you would send that to me, Leah,
I sure
that would
will.
be great.
Thank you so much. So I appreciate the responses and the letters that were sent last night, which I received this morning, and I really didn't have time to go through it. But I will write a more detailed report, a letter, once I have time to review it. But I do have some questions. How can we get procedure information showing that cities impacted as the Google map does not show this?
Can you repeat your question if you don't mind? I'm sorry.
How can we get procedure information? So this is question 4, and I know that you had said something about getting the airports to provide it, but I would like to see information that shows cities impacted, because, here, let me find my question that you... Question 9.
Are you referring to how members of the roundtable and the public can receive updates on procedure development and where they potentially could shift laterally or vertically with amendments to procedures?
Well, actually, it's more the mapping that I would like to see, and then heat maps showing, you know, how much impact is to each area based on its height, altitude, noise impacts.
So currently, as I said before, the best place for right now for updates for amendments to procedures and new procedures is the Instrument Flight Procedure Gateway, and we do have that website listed there. Currently, we do not maintain a database of these procedures over the ground, over Google Earth. However, our commitment with working with the roundtables is if there is a procedure that the roundtable or the members would like to see, that is something that we can present as we go through this with the same requirements that they are forwarded through the chairwoman.
Thank you. So,
Lydia, if just a moment.
Yeah, if I can help out here, I think what Lydia's asking for and what this roundtable's asked for is to see maps of the noise exposure of the analysis that the FAA's done as part of the CADX process to see how noise exposure is changing on the ground so that everyone on the members and their communities can make a decision about, well, this is either a good thing for us or it's not a good thing for us. And as of this date, they've not seen maps that show noise exposure on the ground from these procedures.
So one of the questions that I repeated was the FAA does not use ground-based noise monitoring or ground-based noise impact graphics to create that. We do conduct a noise screening or a pre-screening, as it states there, in the environmental process, and that is covered in the CADX. And depending on the specific level of environmental review, that is where the different noise exposure maps as far as noise screening, and that is different than noise modeling or noise exposure on the ground, that is where those documents or that level of analysis will come into play.
Yeah, that would be what they're looking for. So you're saying the screening process does not produce maps?
Depending on the level of environmental analysis, it will. But again, that is subject to each individual procedure, and depending on what level that procedure meets, that's where the screening analysis will show.
Okay.
So it has to be a pretty much specific request for a particular procedure for you to be able to do this request that we have for these maps.
Currently, yes.
Okay, which means it requires a lot of monitoring from us in order to request for that procedure, which may impact some communities. So I think that's important to note. My other question is, so through the data that was provided in a FOIA request, we know that the FAA was working on a procedure very similar to pirate since 2013. In addition, I think San Francisco Airport has told us that FAA had proposed a procedure called Pirate around 2014. However, this new FAA correspondence claims that Pirate did not exist until recently, when the FAA chose to combine two select committee recommendations on oceanic arrivals. So I want to know, for the full working group that met in June, at the June meeting for the Big Sur overlay, were elected officials, such as those in the roundtable, were they considered stakeholders?
I am not specifically familiar with the members of the collaborative work group or the full working group for the Big Sur, the Pirate overlay, or the Big Sur, I'm sorry, the Surfer overlay. That is a different procedure than the oceanic arrival or the tailored arrival that we are talking about right now.
I'm sorry, if I can answer that question. Are you asking if, well, let me have you ask the question again, please, because this pertains to Surfer and we're not prepared, Adam's not prepared to talk about Surfer
If I
today.
may, Lydia, is it this chart that you're looking at that specifically calls out the performance-based navigation procedure timeline for any procedure, whether it would be loop, pirate, whatever? There's the preliminary activities, the design activities, development, operational preparations, and in the middle of all of those, as you come down the chart, showing the potential community involvement opportunities, there's listed airport coordination for preliminary activity, select official outreach, and industry. And then we go on to airport coordination, select official outreach, public engagement, and industry. And then third, development and operational preparations, notice to airports, notice to select officials, and public information. I think there's some question in our minds who these select officials are, and
That is one question, absolutely. And the other one was, I understand that the select committee had designated a full working group, and I was just wondering, are elected officials part of that full working group? And they had met in June, and I know Bert was in it, but then he couldn't kind of state.
Lydia, I'm trying to get to a generic thing because
Okay.
they're only going to be talking about loop and pirate here. So since this is in our packet, I'm getting to.
Oh, I didn't realize we're talking generic, because
Yes.
I thought we were
Well,
loop
in this
and
case,
pirate.
we can, because they're going to say they're not talking about select committee things here. They're talking loop and pirate. And so I think if we can
Okay.
get some clarification as to who the select officials are and who the players are in the full working group, I think that will help
Okay,
you.
thank you. All right.
And if, I'm sorry, if I can add, we addressed the members, or we listed the members of the working group during the last meeting. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but it encompasses specialists from various air traffic control facilities, including the airport and the, do you know offhand, Adam? And I'm sorry, I know we've answered this question before, but again, I don't want to get off topic. I will get that to you.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. So I just want to state also that the FAA did state that they expect pirate usage to increase, but they do not have control over San Francisco and Oakland demand. So using the published SFO airport directors reports, comparisons were made of the volumes of San Francisco oceanic arrivals before and after Pirate. And based on that San Francisco airport data for the months of May and June 2018 and 2019, there is the San Francisco oceanic arrivals using Pirate are now almost 20% higher than before Pirate was in place. So Pirate usage has increased by almost 20% for the months of May and June between 2018 and 19. One important thing to know is that San Francisco operations did not increase for those months in 2018 and 2019. In fact, daily average operations went down by 6 to 10 flights between 2018 and 2019 for the months of May and June. So bottom line, I just want to say San Francisco traffic did not increase, but Pirate usage increased by almost 20%. So could you help me understand that or explain that to me?
I'm not familiar with the data that you're referring to as far as the data source from the San Francisco airport. In general, that the FAA does not validate third-party sources like that. And like I said, if that is something that you or the roundtable would like a more in-depth analysis on we'd be happy to work with the roundtable in answering such a question, but we would need time to provide a complete and accurate answer to that.
I would appreciate that if you would add that to the list, because we do want to discover.
And again, if you would send those, add that to me, that would be very helpful. Thank you, Lydia.
So we're also asking that you work with us to find ways to manage air traffic control's vectoring of these flights, in particular pilot, to reduce impacts on residential communities on the ground, in addition to the important air traffic control factors of weather and safety. Can you do this?
And as I said, we are committed to working with the roundtables and helping to address noise issues. There isn't one easy solution, as Sky was alluding to in his introduction, that will solve all the noise issues for every community. But as we are here working with the roundtables, that is what we hope to achieve through this work.
Well, I look forward to working together on this and coming to some resolution. Then lastly, well, actually almost lastly, documents provided in response to the FOIA request made by Palo Alto do not provide any noise impact analysis data before ARG or after ARG. The CADEX information does not disclose what noise screening tools were used. Can we get specific information on the noise impact analysis data for Pirate 1 and Pirate 2?
So specific noise analysis, and as I said before, depending on the level of change or depending on the procedure, dictates what level of noise screening or environmental analysis that is conducted. In general, for any environmental action or federal action, the environmental review is done on that action. In terms of this procedure, the Pirate arrival, it ends at ARG Waypoint, or what used to be Woodside, or still is Woodside VOR for the Oceanic arrival. That is the federal action from there. From ARG Waypoint, the aircraft are treated just like they were prior to this procedure establishment.
Wasn't prior to this procedure establishment going to Menlo Waypoint rather than to Sitbai?
We're still talking about the Pirate and the Oceanic arrival.
So see, that's where the problem is, where what you identify Pirate ends at ARG. For us, it doesn't end at ARG. It's part of the Pirate procedure that continue on to Sitbai or to Sitbai now, whereas before it was Menlo and now going and then turning towards San Francisco Airport. So I think that's a big part of where we have discrepancy when we're describing Pirate.
Lydia, would you like, for the sake of time, to submit that question again and ask to have them review it with us when they return?
I would. And then I'd like to ask the roundtable for one more thing, is to request that FAA and/or San Francisco compare usage data for all flights, flight path details, altitudes, ground tracks, etc. And then to do it for a 4-month period each year for both San Francisco and Oakland airports. I'll submit that to you, but it'll be great if we can have data like that every year so that we can compare volume.
Good, thank you. We were supposed to finish this entire discussion by 1:40. We are running out of time.
My apologies.
Again, if anyone has any further questions that they would like to ask, I'm going to ask that you submit them to me as chair, and I will refer them regarding Loop and Pirate, if that's agreeable.
Could I just make one comment? Because it's something I'd really like to have our congressional representatives here. Because I would just like to note that Loop 5, we got a great technical explanation, but did not exactly really address what's the impact on the noise on the ground. We got a response that said, here, the FAA really doesn't look at ground-based noise, and if we want to find out about what's happening with the noise, we should go talk to the airports. And the airports are going to tell us they only go ahead and look at the noise right around the airports. And then we got another technical explanation of what's going on with Pirate, and again, it didn't talk about noise on the ground. But we hear there's an environmental review is done by the FAA, but that environmental review, I don't believe when they say that, that's not the kind of environmental noise review our residents are believing needs to be done. So here's my question to our congressional representatives. Can you guys please get together and think of what legislative change you would want to make to the FAA so that when they review this process, they take into account what it means, the actual impact of the noise on the ground. They're looking at noise, when they say they're looking at noise, they're doing it in a different way than what our residents want to understand what the impact on the ground is. And so, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to use this example because what they gave was great responses, but I don't believe it's answering the question that our residents are trying to ask. And I think the only way we're going to get this to change is if congressional leadership, through whatever processes you guys use, change the requirements about how you ask or tell the FAA to operate, and that they need to take more into account what is actually ground-based noise, and it goes a lot into what Lydia was saying, and be able to understand in maps and impact. So I just wanted to be able to tie those things together right here, and I thank you very much.
So, Glenn beat me to it, but every time for the last 2 years, I've heard the same statement, well, we don't do ground-based noise monitoring. And every time I hear that, you know, it's why not and how can you do it? So I second what Glenn said and really appreciate that he brought that up.
Thank you, Steve. Adam, if you'd continue with item number C.
Absolutely. And similar to my explanation, my answers for items A and B, I pulled general themes throughout the documents just in the interest of time for item C. Item C specifically refers to the south flow at San Jose, and over the data analysis that we conducted over the past 8 years, the south flow accounts for 25% of the operations at San Jose. One of the themes in there was a request for dispersion. As of right now, dispersion cannot be proceduralized. It cannot be procedurally separated from other either arrival or departure procedures in the complex airspaces such as the Bay Area. Dispersion can only be achieved via radar vectors. When a radar vector is issued by air traffic control, the aircraft's heading, speed, and altitude are mandated by air traffic control. So in other requests for aircraft to glide or to use an optimum profile descent, we can't have a radar vector and an optimized profile descent simultaneously for every single aircraft. It's kind of either one or the other most of the time. By not having dispersion, it also increases predictability and repeatability for these arrivals and departure aircraft or routes into the Bay Area, especially with complex airspace. That does help with separation and efficiency. Another theme was the east downwind. It accounts for 8% of all south flow operations in 2018. That was the year that we studied specifically the east downwind. So essentially it's 8% of 25% of all arrival aircraft into the San Jose airport. It is bound by terrain to the east. I'm not familiar, I'm from Seattle, but I did look at the terrain. It is bound by higher terrain to the east, and so that does kind of limit how much controllers can vector if they need to space or add space between aircraft in front or behind. It is not a proceduralized route, so it does take additional workload away from the controllers being able to monitor and keep eyes on other areas within their sector. And again, to Mr. Hendricks' request for ground-based noise monitoring, currently the FAA does not use noise monitoring on the ground to validate procedures or their noise screening models. There were several requests in the report for limitations on aircraft speed and configuration. As I said before, vectoring and speed control are necessary tools for air traffic control to dynamically and tactically control and separate air traffic, especially in complex environments such as the Bay Area. In general, and especially regarding aircraft configurations, there were references to flaps and slats, spoilers, and landing gears. The FAA does not generally place a mandate on when pilots should and could use aircraft speed control devices like that. It's at the pilot's prerogative to establish a safe and stable approach based on the controller inputs or controller instructions. The one request in there that we did identify as something that the FAA potentially could be able to support is the change of the crossing restriction at Hitter Waypoint. The request was to change the restriction from at exactly 4,000 feet mean sea level to a crossing restriction of at or above 4,000 feet mean sea level. And similar to the IFP or Instrument Flight Procedures Gateway, the FAA asked that if that is something that the Roundtable would like to explore, that a gateway request through that IFP gateway is submitted, and we can begin the DOT-41 or PBN process as shown on the board to explore the feasibility of that procedure or of that change.
Did that complete that? Thank you. Glenn.
Yeah, I'm going to try and be really brief here because I could take about 8 hours with all of my questions about this particular document, but I'll just be really quick. So just I want to touch on the noise monitoring. What I think we're really requesting is that ground impact noise, the impact of that, be included in the analysis, whether it's actual ground level noise monitoring or whatever, because that just doesn't appear to be done right now. I guess we'll have to ask the committee to do this at or above the 4,000. I really want to go ahead and just try and drive on the dispersion piece, and specifically dispersion over Sunnyvale. And I'm a simple guy. And you say here 25% of the operations go that way. I believe that it varies by year and can be significantly less. But it's the creation of the rail. And you say there cannot be any form of dispersion that can be created. And I'm trying to understand why the FAA couldn't do something like define 2 paths over Sunnyvale, over what's the existing width that we used to have underground, under the radar-based, call it Path A and Path B. And why can't on odd number days, aircraft go left, and on even number days, aircraft go right? It goes ahead and it continues to provide the predictability that the FAA wants to be able to go ahead and have. It's certainly programmable. You can write a written manual procedure that says left one day, right one day. We did it during the gas crisis and gas rationing for what goes on. You can certainly program that when it's an odd number day, go to this one, an even number day, go to that one. So with that, why does the FAA say no level of dispersion that can be added into the procedure over Sunnyvale?
Currently, as is stated in the response to that recommendation, the FAA does not have a way of adding several different or even 2 different procedures for the same arrival route into the same airport. It does take away, for each arrival, there are conflicting other arrival routes, especially in the Bay Area, as well as departure routes that will also need to be amended to separate.
I don't believe you understand what I'm saying. That before we had the rails, when it was radar-based, there was a width of what was flying over Sunnyvale. And that was not in conflict with any other flight path, airports, arrivals, departures from anywhere else. All I'm suggesting is pick the left width and the right width. So that's in no conflict with any other thing that's going on. It's been a flown procedure for decades. And just define a waypoint over one and a waypoint over the other. So that's what you use for the GPS based routing.
No, I'm trying to turn it off.
I'm sorry.
And like I said, I'm a simple guy. I'm trying to understand why, if I can come up with something that I believe fits all of your guys' requirements, doesn't move sound over any other cities, it just tries to disperse the noise a little bit the way it was, meets all of your requirements for dispersion, not dispersion, but repeatability, safety, all that kind of stuff like that. We're not asking to say, here, do one flight, then the next, and switch back and forth. That could be confusing. It just goes ahead and says, on odd number days, you do it right here. Even number days, you do it right here. We could make a chart that goes up on the wall in the air traffic control thing. You can write written procedures for it. It's certainly a programmable type concept. There's not 1,000 if-then else's that have to go into the logic. Why something like that can't be done?
So I don't know that we have the answer to that today, but what I can tell you is that if that is a priority recommendation that the Roundtable wants us to look at and work on, we can look at that. I don't think we have the answer of whether it can be done. I understand your question.
But this is the challenge we have. I keep hearing that you want to work with us, and what we've talked about and said here, there's challenges and stuff, and what we hear is, nope, can't be done. And we're saying, well, here there are things that could be looked at that are not radical in nature. And is the answer, well, we have to go ahead and then submit that as a request, as opposed to proactively kind of working together? And could we sit down and kind of go, well, we understand what you're saying, but we're a little bit concerned about this, and we can give you some feedback up front before we go through all this whole formal structure process where we just submit something and we get, an I dotted wrong or a T incorrectly done, and we just go, here, it doesn't work.
Glenn, am I hearing a suggestion that you would like to form a subcommittee to discuss this sort of thing, including
Hyder?
If that is the way we should go ahead and do it, then yes, I guess that's what I'm suggesting. I'm just trying to understand better that I'm hearing the FAA says to me all the time, we want to work together. We've asked a question and we got just a flat no. And then the way we're supposed to work is, oh, go through this other formal, procedure, but doesn't seem to me to allow that kind of collaborative working together that you guys keep telling me you want to do.
Well, if
So I'm just trying to understand how we really translate this into with your community engagement people, and through this collaborative working process, we can have a discussion about how to try and get and submit something that has a much higher chance of getting through the process.
Well, there again, I would like to request that if that is the proposal, then you submit it to us in writing. Unfortunately, we don't have the right people here right now to say, yes, we can do it, or no, we can't. If that is something that you want us to look at, we would look at it. And if there's potential that there could be a quick answer to that, I don't know, we could easily, look into it if you send it to us in writing.
Okay.
And hopefully answer before the next technical meeting.
Okay, I'd like to just ask
If that's
one
an
other,
option.
that's great, and we'll do that. One other question in the interest of time. On page 28 in the response, item SS, it talked about the SFO airspace, and it talks about SFO departure aircraft utilize 10 LR approximately 3% of the year. And because it's used 3% of the year, it said we couldn't even explore a different procedure. And we'll go ahead and submit this as a question, but this relates to the reason South Flow is so low is because SFO owns the airspace. And then we asked a question about, well, here, could we find a way to try and collaborate together to be able to use that? And we're told SFO uses the airspace 3% of the time, so we can't do anything. That's just another example. If the answer had been SFO uses the airspace 51% of the time, I could understand why we wouldn't be looking at something there. But when they're using the airspace, according to your guys' numbers, that they barely use that airspace, why can't we look and try and find a spot that we could use it 50% of the time, kind of thing? If they were using it 97% of the time, I'd understand. But if they use it 3% of the time and said, oh, we can't look at it, that's just another example of I'm trying to understand how we can kind of collaboratively work together. And do you understand my question? I'm not looking for a response right now, but we'll submit this stuff. But that's the kind of stuff I would love to be able to see a detailed level discussion when we have more than 15 seconds to talk about this, to try and understand your responses that I understand you think are answers, but they don't really answer our questions. They're responses.
As my role of facilitator, I'm going to ask that we move on because we are way behind at this point in time.
Okay, and so, C. First of all, I did allude to this, and if we could get some information back on specifically who these select official outreaches, the definition of who, because it sounds like you're selecting, and that doesn't help smooth things out.
No, and I understand that. And just to clarify, when it states select official, that does include either elected or appointed. And so just to make sure we're including everybody, that's why we identified it as select official. So it is a simple word clarification that we can
And
we
perhaps
can change that.
a list, too, of full working group, as you did before.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I cannot find it. I think it's in a notebook that I've already filled up and filed, so thank you. So we've done South Flow. We can now open the public comment period time. Do we have speaker slips here for item number 3? Steve? Good. In the order that I have them, it's Darlene Yapley, Jennifer Landisman, and Jackie Rice. Jackie, I note that you are a San Lorenzo Valley resident. This was going to be opened only for discussions of Loop, Pirate, and South Flow. So if you could clarify that when your turn comes up. And we'll slot you in at another time if it does not have to do with Loop, Pirate, or South Flow. Darlene.
Pirate, the FAA presented at the San Francisco Roundtable December 2018 and communicated that they did not expect an increase in volume for Pirate. I believe they also said the same thing in one of the earlier presentations to this group. I think it's interesting that the February 2019 letter to Palo Alto changes and says we anticipate more aircraft. So what is the right answer and why did this change? And what was actually used in the original July 17, 2018 environmental analysis? The other comment I'd like to make is the AEDT tool does not require monitors on the ground. They can estimate noise, so they have the tools to estimate noise for future procedures. The second point is we are asking about who is on these different groups. Well, we do know that Bert represented us at the full working group for the Big Sur overlay, but he was embargoed from telling us what happened almost 3 months ago. So let's just say we know who it is. We actually can't get the answer. So I think my question is, why can't our community representatives share a timely update with this roundtable?
Much. Next speaker is Jennifer Landesman.
Hi. Hello? No? Is it here? Sorry. Here? Good afternoon. Welcome, Clara, Adam. And to the congressional offices that are here, I think it's really important to get this situation about legislation needed in order to get environmental screenings in a transparent way to the communities. Because my understanding is that the current legislation, the law is that you have to have a screening and you have to use the mandated tool, which Darlene referred to, the Aviation Environmental Design Tool. We all know that the FAA cannot measure everybody's noise in all of the United States. So it's completely understandable that you use models in order to come up with the decisions of environmental analysis. But you're saying that the level of environmental analysis depends on the level of change. In order to do that, you have to have a baseline. And in order to do a CADX, you would have to have had an environmental review prior to being able to say nothing has changed from the prior environmental review. We have history on the Pirate. In your current document of the CADX, you say you are switching from the oceanic tailored arrival. The oceanic tailored arrival ends on the San Francisco runway. It does not end in the ocean. So you're taking something away that's good, and the OTA has been used frequently, and I have that from documents in 2013, where a working group discusses that, and also the evolution of the Pirate 1, which all of a sudden is from the Select Committee. Select Committee did not ask for that Pirate 1 that has come up with the vectoring on where the beginning and end is controversial. And that's my last point. You cannot do a CADX if per your own documents today, you say extraordinary circumstances precludes a CADX. A CADX does not apply if there is controversy. There's a lot of controversy on Pirate. And my last point is that while we're asking questions, you're making other changes. So we need to kind of get common.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jackie Rice? Okay, thank you for the clarification. And Jennifer?
Hi, I'm here to speak about San Jose Airport's South Flow. NextGen, as we know, concentrates the flights into rails. So when NextGen was implemented, flight paths that were miles wide went into rails so that everything was repeatable and predictable. And this was to get more airplanes in the airport. I get it, but the FAA is working toward rails, and this is wrong. NextGen is causing a problem. And as Glenn has mentioned, we need to find a way to create multiple flight paths so that the previous long-term flights, that wide flight paths, those light flight paths, are emulated. Right now, there is no technology to disperse.
Hey, Jennifer.
But we need to work toward that.
Yeah, just talking to the mic.
Oh, I'm
We're
so
not picking
sorry.
you up. Thanks.
Okay. Right now, we're working, the FAA is working toward the rails. They need to be working toward technology that creates dispersion. And if that doesn't occur, this problem is going to be all over the United States. We need to work toward that dispersion, that technology. Time-based flow management, which is what the FAA is working for or working toward, is going to make things even worse. So the technology has to come that creates the dispersion so that people are not so impacted. The previous dispersion that we had was fine. People were not complaining. Now you have roundtables everywhere. People are impacted. Children are impacted. We need to be looking at different technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michelle Flaherty? Oh, no, Karen Porter first, and then Michelle Flaherty.
Hi. Actually, the preceding speakers
Speak into the microphone, please.
captured a lot of my comments, so I guess I just want to point out just this dissonance I'm having with when the FAA's mantra on the one hand is they can't move noise, ignoring for the fact that they did move noise with NextGen and are continuing to do so, such as with Surfer 3, Pirate. But on the other hand, they say, well, we don't measure noise on the ground. That's up to the airport. Well, if the airport measures the noise on the ground, then what does the FAA do? Does the FAA even collect that information? Or is the airport collecting that information and then it's there, but the FAA is not paying any attention to it? So I'd like to know exactly how the FAA uses the noise information that it says the airports must collect and that the FAA is not responsible for. And I guess my understanding of the FAA reauthorization legislation is the FAA is supposed to pay more attention to noise analysis. And I'll just say lastly, I know there were a couple references by the FAA representative to the categorical exclusion, CAT-X analysis that was done. I'd like the FAA to start producing and making available all of that analysis because they hide behind it, but the public has no understanding of what information is being collected or how it's being analyzed. I could go on, but I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Flaherty. And that's the last
Madam,
speaker slip
Madam
I
Chair,
have.
if you could let the people know, the podium itself is a speaker. The edge of it is a microphone. It actually works better than the other one. It's hard when you use your laptops because you're blocking to the mic.
Good to know. Thank you. My name is Michelle Flaherty. I'm actually staff at the City of Palo Alto, and I just wanted to speak briefly. There was some elements of the slide presentation that didn't actually get discussed due to time, I suppose. There was the charts that were referenced by the chair earlier showed the category of development and operational preparedness and indicated that public information would be distributed through the IFP gateway. And we're going to need greater clarification from the FAA about that. Currently, if you go to the IFP gateway, before you can access it, you have to accept a disclaimer which reads, the IFP gateway is a communication tool the FAA uses to disseminate information about proposed changes to flight procedures to solicit comments from civil aviation organizations, affected military and civil air traffic control facilities, and aircraft owners and sponsors. The website is intended only for aeronautical audience who can provide technical aeronautical comments. So if we're trying to direct our community members to where they can access information, it would be helpful to understand whether or not there's a plan to change the purpose of the gateway altogether. We understood from the FAA that they were frustrated that the general public was using the FAA gateway in the past and actually characterized that as abusing it because that's not what it was intended for. So getting some clarification around the purpose of the gateway would be helpful, particularly because our city pays our own consultants to analyze the data on the gateway and translate it into English for our policymakers and our public. So if it is for the public, it would actually need to be written in less technical information as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That, as I indicated, was our last speaker slip. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing no one, I'll open this up for any further discussion. At this point, I have noted that Lydia will be submitting questions regarding Pirate. Glenn, you will be submitting questions regarding South Flow, and we will get them to you in a timely manner. We're scheduled to meet in October with you all again. I'm hoping that we can schedule that kind of information to be
Madam
relayed to
Chair?
us. Yes, Anita.
May I also reserve the option to provide questions within the next 48 hours? I have to apologize. I was in meetings yesterday from 3 p.m. until 1 o'clock this morning, so it was truly not feasible for me, and I had 2 more meetings this morning.
Certainly.
I would then, as an addendum to that, beg that if we're going to get information back from the FAA, that we are going to have to understand and be able to act on intelligently as a part of this body. We need it more than a few hours before our meeting. And I know that it is very difficult to get things passed, but we can't do our jobs when we get this stuff the day before at the best.
Thank you, Anita. I agree with you completely. We have had these discussions before. Kathy, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to alert you that I had questions about Loop 5 as well, but I'm happy to submit them and just want to make you aware that I will be doing so.
Appreciate. I didn't mean to cut you off. And anyone else on my right? Michelle, yes.
I have one comment. From what I'm hearing right now is that FAA is not directly responsible for collecting the ground level noise. The airport is. So giving all the people sitting here, when I met with my town resident, the only concern they have is the ground level noise reduction. And that's why the whole purpose of me being here is to reduce the noise for the neighborhood, for the ground level. If the airport is the one who collecting this noise, who can effectively reduce the noise? I don't know. I haven't heard this. Seems like airport should be also one of the participants for this roundtable discussion.
I agree. Thank you. Lisa? All right. And Carlos, you're sitting back. Okay, good. And I will be adding, of course, my request for defining the select official outreach as noted. So we can move on then to item number 4, which is the roundtable budget discussion. Andy Jordan will be presenting that to us. It's a fact of life that we have ask all of you cities to pay a fair amount based on your population for the running of this roundtable. We have put a lot of effort into creating the foundation for this to go forward. As a result, some of the things that were listed in the contract we have not been able to get to, such as the technical reports, because it has taken a lot of time to just, as I said, lay the groundwork for setting this up. And Andy is here today to present the realities of what has gone into forming the budget and what we are looking for the future. And I'll be asking for some input from you to say where we're going to be going forward. And I wanted to ask one question of you, Andy, that I've been meaning to. Is this something that we can do today, or that you're expecting that we will take it back to our councils and then come back?
Well, I would prefer that something happen today. If something happens, then your councils will have to approve the budget. But when each of your councils joined the roundtable, except for 2 cities, the cities joined knowing that this was not just a one-year deal, that we were moving on. I believe that the county of Santa Cruz and the town of Los Altos Hills both approved membership for 1 year and would reevaluate. But our MOU definitely said that membership would be ongoing. So our bylaws and the MOU actually establish a fiscal year calendar, but the way that we established this, we collected dues, and it turned out to be for a calendar year. So If we would like to move forward past December of 2019, apologies for the 2020 date in there, but if we want to move forward past this December 2019, we need a 6-month budget approval so that I can bill the jurisdictions. And I would be billing as a fiscal agent to all of the jurisdictions for an additional 6 months. If we approve for 6 months, I'm just proposing that we base it on the current budget that we have of $250,000, and we're hoping that we will also be able to bring on a few more members that will help with the budget. So if we only do 6 months, and this has to come back to you again in between February and next April, per the bylaws of approving the next fiscal year budget. And that would also align with your fiscal budgets for your jurisdictions so that you can plan. So, would you like me to go through anything else? I've just chosen to stay with the $250,000 on the annual basis because this was not an easy lift to bring all of the jurisdictions on. San Francisco Roundtable, they now have a $300,000 budget a year. Our Roundtable is very unique because we're hoping to be working with 2 airports as well as the other roundtables, and so we will have to have some amendments here and there as we figure out how to make this work efficiently as well.
So the packet contains the information that Andy is briefly alluding to because
yes.
the
So the information also, I'm also asking, our MOU allows, our bylaws and MOU allow for other membership, and I'm also using this as an opportunity to discuss with you whether we would like to create a membership opportunity for the airports. We are the only roundtable that does not have an airport as a member. The rest of the airports, some of the roundtables exist because of the airport. They have their own roundtables. We are a different kind of community roundtable, and so we would like to, I would advise it would be a good idea to have a membership for the airport so that they could join, and that also means that they would have to pay. And it also would allow them to have a voting seat. And in the other roundtables, they all have, the airports do have a voting seat. What I would be suggesting here is that because we have created dues, and Evan, this is on page 20, that our dues are based on a per capita system. And so what I have listed here is we have San Jose, their population, and this is dues for the airports if they would like to join, and we would welcome them to join if you approved this. So per capita for the area for San Francisco and San Jose, but that didn't quite make sense to me that San Francisco has a lower population, yet they have 58 million passengers approximately that go through their airport, and San Jose has approximately 1/5 of that. So what I would suggest is that we go for a per capita formula as well for San Francisco Airport, and it would be $80,524, and we would also use San Jose's per capita of $945,000 at their last census, but we would divide it by 5 because they have basically a 1/5 of the passengers going through their airport. Now, perhaps somebody has a better idea, but that was what a few staff members and I were able to come up with.
So this is giving us an opportunity to evaluate what we've gotten, where we're going, the individuals that we would like to include. It's also meaning that because we have spent money so fast, that there's a
Yes.
reason that, do you want to
Yes,
speak
we
to
would
that, Andy?
also, the reason is we are going through money rather quickly, and so we would also use this as an opportunity to reevaluate our meeting schedule. The ad hoc committee that came up with the proposal for this roundtable, we had always envisioned that we would meet every other month, but since we were trying to get everyone up to speed, and this was a new little venture, we met every month. And at this time, I would also recommend that we move to an every other month meeting format. It would allow our consultant to not be hurried to do work, and we also know that the FAA will only provide technical guidance every other month, or technical reports.
And part of that also has to do with the fact that our consultant is not available for November, and it falls right in with Thanksgiving. And then come December, our meeting date would actually be Christmas Day. So we will probably need to discuss that moving forward. But for this point, the suggestion might be, depending on how you all feel, that we skip September and move to October. And in October, as we get closer to the end of the year, that we discuss, and we're also talking about setting up subcommittees that we discuss if we want to have an alternative for December. But I'm thinking that's a discussion that can occur in the October meeting. Ed, I saw that you had a question.
Yeah, in an effort to try to save time, I'm prepared to make a motion if you want to hear from, after you hear from the public.
Great. Anybody else have any questions at this point of Andy?
I have a question. Actually, I have a comment. Learning the membership.
Actually, this is time for questions, Michelle.
Not just a comment. I would say
It's
that
time for questions, Michelle.
Question.
We'll bring it back around after we've had a period of public comment, and then you can make your comment after we have the questions and public comment. Lisa?
Is the contract with ESA separate from this discussion?
Yes, it is. And so we have, with ESA, we have, right now, we have a one-year contract with optional up to 3 years to renew, but it is a separate conversation.
And would it be the roundtable that discusses that, or is it the cities association?
The contract is with the Cities Association. But I would believe that we would do it in conjunction with you as we were acting. You did not exist, and so
But I was wondering if it moved to us.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions at this time? I have one speaker slip from Jennifer Landesman. So Andy,
Yep, I'll come in.
we'll get you back up for comments, please, at the end.
Hi, regarding budgeting, sorry. And
There you go.
airport membership, I think that's really important. And I just wanted to point out to the letter from San Jose that they wrote to the Roundtable, and they kind of have a point. They say, it's really nice of you to do whatever you're doing, but we're going to do our own thing anyway. And that's the city of San Jose, but they own the airport. And I just think that if we're not working with the airports, if the airports are not helping fund the situation, if it's really just kind of, then I don't know how, is the money being well spent? I think those questions need to be answered. So we worked really hard to get this roundtable together because we believe very much that we do all have to work together, but that means everybody at the table. And so I think that it's really important to get the airports on there. And I don't know if this is the right moment to bring this up regarding budgeting, but please, that should be a high priority. It's just going too easy on the airports, especially if they have all these other responsibilities that the FAA looks to them to.
Normally, we do not respond to speakers that come up. No. I have good news. And it actually asks what you're talking to, speaks to what you're talking to, and I have not had an opportunity to explain. I did get a letter from the San Jose airport, and I have been doing an outreach with Chappie Jones. And dependent on our being able to put everything together, the logistics, we have a time to meet with the airport and San Jose in talks of including them in this roundtable.
Okay, great. And that they can be, contributed.
So, and we are doing ongoing talks with San Francisco to include them also. So, Jennifer, I have a speaker slip for you.
Yes, I just had one thing to mention about San Jose Airport. I do think they should participate. However, I'm a little bit questioning how much they would pay and the fact that they would get a vote. San Jose City already owns San Jose Airport. So effectively, if both entities came in, that would give San Jose 2 votes in this body, and that could be a problem. That sounds a little bit more like the ad hoc committee, where again, they took 2 votes in the ad hoc committee. So I would be a little apprehensive in having them be able to vote. San Francisco Airport, on the other hand, is a different entity. They own the airport and aren't impacted necessarily. So San Francisco joining, I would agree to. San Jose Airport, I'm not sure.
That is all the speaker slips, although I understand Fabi would like to speak to this matter. Is that right? Item 4?
I'm sorry, not to this matter. I just want to revisit your question about the select members.
Oh, okay. We'll come around to that. Thank you. I got it, incorrect information. Yes, please, Andy, if you go back up.
I would also just like to clarify on the San Francisco Airport. San Francisco Airport has a vote, San Francisco City has a vote, and the County of San Francisco has a vote. So on the SFO roundtable, San Francisco has 3 votes.
Okay. Were there other further questions or discussion? Yes, Ed.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and we can continue the conversation. But the motion I'd like to make is to approve a 6-month budget to invite San Jose Airport and San Francisco airports to join, along with reissuing City of San Jose to rejoin. And also like to move ASAP to 2-month bi-monthly meetings.
And a second from Kathy. While we're doing motions, I also am going to entertain anyone interested in 18 months. Is anyone interested in 18 months?
This is Steve Preminger.
Yes. Hello, Steve.
Hi.
Please go ahead.
Thank you for accommodating me this way. I'm out due to the back injuries that had me out at the earlier meeting. I would urge a substitute motion that caused us to recommend an 18-month extension. I think doing the 6-month extension doesn't buy us enough time. There's so much to do, and then they have to turn around and do it again, assuming we're making progress, and I feel like we are making progress. It just doesn't make sense to me to go for the shorter amount of time. Although I do support what Ed said in terms of going to every other month meetings, I think that does make sense, and it'll make us more efficient.
Is there a second for Steve's motion for 18 months?
May I ask a question? Lydia?
Yes.
Are we to go back to our councils to find out before?
I believe that I would just bill them because you have already joined the roundtable and we have an MOU. There are only 2 jurisdictions that joined the roundtable, with the exception of only joining for 1 year. And
Okay,
that
I
was
see Palo Alto, Michelle saying yes. So I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you very much.
And we would not bill everybody for 18 months right away. We would do it 6 months and then again in the next fiscal year.
Okay. I normally, under Robert's Rules of Order, a second motion is voted on first. And so we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. But we are open to discussion at this point. I saw Michelle first, Carlos.
Glenn's was on. Oh, he saw us.
Yeah, Michelle, Carlos, Lisa, and then this way.
I just want to say that I need if we have to approve a budget today, I'm not ready to do that. Given that in the past experience, I do need to bring this up to my council agenda. It is listed in September agenda for a budget approval. Just to let you know that.
Thank you, Carlos.
Yes, I'll be voting no on the substitute motion for 18 months. I do support a 6-month extension. I think my board is supportive of the roundtable, but at the same time wants to make sure that this is the best way to invest our funds and that we're being successful. And I think a 6-month extension would give us more time to get the board to that place.
Lisa?
So I have concerns about moving to every other month for meetings, especially at the beginning here where we're trying to get established and get things going. I think a lot can happen in 2 months, and so I'm very concerned about moving to every other month. And I'd like to see if we could find a way to keep these monthly. And if that's cut back on resources to make it happen, I'd be willing to talk about what that might look like. But I do feel very strongly that this has to remain monthly. And in terms of 6 months or 18 months, I personally feel like 18 months is fine with me. I think this is a long-term effort here. And if we find that, 12 months from now we are done, then we can stop. But I feel like to signal that this is a long-term effort that we're committed to is important.
Thank you. Steve, because I'm going to be calling this out as a separate thing to vote on, so in terms of the meetings. So, and I know it was in the original motion, but I want to revisit it after we've had other comments, just so I can keep it straight. Liz?
Yes. I'm also in favor of the 6-month budget approval, simply because it keeps it on track with our city's fiscal year, as well as the fact that we're considering, we've spent a lot of money this time, and we're considering cutting down on meetings, and we're going to be adjusting, so that 6-month period will give us a time to really evaluate what we need to do, and then we can go forward from there.
Glenn, I see your light on.
Yeah, we just always make things a lot harder than I think it needs to be. I'm going to vote for either 6 or 18 months, whatever it takes for us to keep going right now. I think it'd be easier if we looked at 18 months. It actually aligns better with our fiscal years of what we have. But I think however we do this, could we all just enthusiastically say, we want to see this continue and move forward, whether or not we're going with 6 or 18. I hope that's the message we come across with.
And Anita?
I'm perfectly comfortable advocating for an 18-month. I also agree with what Lisa Manichek said. I think we need to continue to meet every month for now, at least until we get a couple of things set up. One is subcommittees that could work effectively in between, and so that we can be assured that items that require timely response or intervention on our part with respect to especially procedure development or procedure changes, that we have some routinized way of making sure we don't lose a chance to comment on those, which I think is really at risk if we go to every other month. That said, I'm with Glenn. Let's try and be enthusiastic about making this work, but I think we need to have a real understanding of whether there is a basis for solving this problem. And what was articulated earlier, and Glenn articulated it, and some of the other comments, I think right now raises a question, and I'm glad that the congressional representatives were here to hear this, that if there is not ground noise information that is being used to evaluate both a prospective change and then the effect of a change, then I really personally would have doubts about our ultimate likelihood of success. So I'd like to be sure that we really, when we get to the plan and what we're doing, that we're really sure we have a reasonable chance of achieving our overall goal.
Steve, I don't see your light on. Would you like to speak? Or you're sharing? You're sharing. Okay.
Yeah, normally I change my mind, yes. So I was on the select committee, and now I'm on this committee, and I would like to be as enthusiastic as my colleague has stated, but it's difficult. We seem to always have the same thing. We want dispersion, and the response is it's not possible. So 6 months is fine with me, and if we can't do anything positive in those 6 months, yeah, then I wouldn't want to even continue for another year.
Lydia, you seconded the 18 months, so I would like before we go ahead and vote, to ask Steve Alverson what it would mean if we were going to go to every other month, because I think that will influence the vote. But Ed, you wanted to say something?
I just want to
first.
clarify the motion, just to make sure, and I think I'm in line with also the second motion, and that is that, number one, I remain enthusiastic about this process, so I'm going to go with that. Number two, I still support the 6 months, but with regard to the meeting, I put in there, move to the meeting every 2 months as soon as possible, and that's open-ended for us to decide what we think is as soon as possible. It's not immediately, even though that may seem as soon as possible, it's as soon as we deem that it's appropriate, if that's a better clarification. So I just wanted to clarify. And I believe that the other motion probably would feel the same way about, because the only change in it is the term of the contract.
So, Andy and Steve, we are quickly running out of money. In reality, unless we bring other payers in who would be prorated, we are going to run out of money. The money has gone for several items that have benefited the Roundtable tremendously, and the time has gone to an awful lot of community input that has taken up a lot of the time of the consultant. That's a reflection of all the years of not having a body, a venue in which to speak. And we recognize that. We are working very hard to streamline that process so that, as you heard today, requests will come into me as chair and also community members. If you have questions about whether something is in the packet or not, please communicate that to me so that it does not go directly to the consultant. That way I can bundle the questions as they come in and we can use our time more efficiently. I'm looking at trying to be efficient with this body, with the constraints of the budget, with the money that you cities have spent. And Steve, if you have any other ideas of what we can do. We have certain items that the public does not see. There are follow-up calls every week. There are calls with the FAA at least once a month. And there are other items that we are doing behind the scenes that I have indicated are set to set up this organization in this particular time period. Moving forward, I don't see that type of extensive involvement will be required.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for the benefit of the Roundtable, to give you a sense of sort of the budgetary spending, I shared with Andy a spreadsheet that tracks on a monthly basis the amount of time that we're spending.
It's in the packet.
Oh, it's in the packet.
Through June.
And so you can see that there's been a buildup. You know, we start off slowly getting the Roundtable off the ground, and then as the Roundtable makes requests for various activities, such as preparing a work program, preparing a strategic plan, developing matrices to track what's going on, our work continues to ramp up. Hopefully, we're sort of beyond this ramping up portion once we get the strategic plan and work program approved, and we'll sort of slow down and reach a more normal pace. Of course, these meetings are a driver in terms of our activity, getting prepared for them, making sure that we have the agenda filled out, when the FA is going to be there, who's going to speak, those types of things. So an idea of going to every other month would spread that particular impact out, but the work would still continue in the background. It's not as though things would stop. It would just reduce the amount of activity that we have building up to each meeting. One thing that we can do, taking it from Ed's suggestion, is sort of see how this goes over time or as soon as possible, is to track this and see if how we're spending over the next couple of months, and can we dial that back. For example, if we were to do the September meeting, see how things are tracking, then maybe again come back and have that discussion. I think the difficulty for Andy is you need a decision fairly soon on this, like today, but we'll do everything we can to control cost and certainly work with the chair, but I think it's the nature of the building up in organizing of this roundtable, and over time it should become a little bit more stable. The other thing, which I've mentioned to both Andy and the chair, and the community has asked for this, is we've not had an opportunity yet to do the technical analysis that we all want to see done and that we've been retained to do, and that's sort of a fun and exciting part of the technical work we do, running AEDT, that type of thing. And we'd like to be able to have some money to do that work once the work program priorities are laid out for us. And so the idea of going to every other month would then reserve some of that money to do that technical work over the next 6 months or 18 months, whatever the roundtable decides.
Are there any further questions? Ed, did you, okay, no. Michelle, your light is still on. Did you have a comment? No, okay, good. Then we will move to the second motion, which was from Steve. Steve, would you repeat your motion, please?
Essentially, that we go for an 18-month budget. I think to do anything less than that is to send a contradictory message that we're enthusiastic, we want to move forward, but only for a little while. And I think I would urge people to vote for the 18-month budget. I agree with Ed, let's figure out when we could start every other month, or whether we should, but we don't need to do that right away. But I feel like this meeting is bringing us all together. We're really willing to take a look at potential solutions. We all have ideas, and I think every meeting we get closer and closer as a committee. And so let's not limit us by saying we're going to do 6 months and then we'll look to do it another 6 months or whatever. Let's be bolder than that.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote, and I would like you to do it. I've got to do a voice vote because Steve is here. So I will go down the way. Steve, would you cast your vote, please? For your... Yes, Steve Preminger, yes.
Well, I'll vote the way I make
I just had to, for the record, thank you. Kathy, we'll move from you. No, okay. Ed?
No.
Michelle?
No.
Carlos?
No.
Lisa?
Yes.
Mary Lynn? Yes. Liz?
No.
Glenn?
Yes.
Anita?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
And Lydia?
Yes.
We're tied. So that fails then. We have to go to the first motion. Ed, would you read it again, please?
Sure. It is the prepare the budget contract for 6 months, extend invitations to San Jose and San Francisco airports under the adjusted format by Andy, and move the meetings to every 2 months, and change that to as soon as possible to as soon as practical.
Okay. Steve Preminger? Yes or no?
Well, I would say no if I could reconsider my motion.
Okay. Let's go at this end. Lydia?
Yes.
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Good for you. Sorry.
Yes.
Carlos?
Yes.
Yes.
And Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 to 2, with Cynthia Matthews absent. So we have a 6-month budget, and we need a discussion on every other month. And because we've got that coming up before us, we are going to have to deliberate on whether we meet next month or not at this point, I believe. Right? I mean, we need to know when we're going to, what I'm adjourning this meeting to. Lydia?
Just one comment. For future contracts, may I just suggest aligning all the wording as similar to what we have on our resolution?
That's not under on our agenda today. Okay. Our future contracts, we're only talking about our meeting right now.
Okay.
Okay. It's not agendized.
Well, if there was a contract with ESA or with, in terms of the budget stuff.
We're only discussing the budget today.
Okay.
Okay. Ed? Oh, no, Michelle. Sorry, the lights. Okay, good. Then I had, yes.
So is the question, I might have missed it, when our next meeting is? Is that what you want? Then, in interest of trying to deal with stuff, and because we're dealing with, November and stuff, I'll just put out there, can we go ahead and say the next meeting is going to be in October, and that we're going to skip November, and then we'll have December, and then as we get into the new year, we'll figure out if that's appropriate to continue with that schedule or not.
I'll
Do I have a
second that motion.
Okay, good, thank you. Glenn and Ed, we don't meet December. We haven't determined December. So your motion, December is Christmas.
So I was just, I would be very uncomfortable with not having a meeting in November, not having a meeting in December, if we need to move the December date off of Christmas so that we're not trying to figure out where, Santa's sleigh is. I wasn't trying to specify the date,
So
but I
as-
think that's all I was trying to
As
get
the
to.
maker of the motion, would you be comfortable amending it to say that we will take that discussion up in October for the December meeting?
Absolutely.
And-
Okay with the second.
Okay, good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, do you need to
can't do
read it?
that.
Oh,
Okay.
Steve, nope, sorry, yes, Steve. Steve Preminger, yes, thank you.
Correct.
I had a question. Did you
Yes.
skip September?
Yes.
Yes, we are skipping September. We are moving it all the way. So and Carlos, did you have a comment?
Oh, no.
Okay, and Ed, did you have a comment? Lights on. Just, that's all I can go by. Okay, yeah, we have to do the voice vote. So Steve Preminger, are you in favor of Glenn's motion, which says that we move the next meeting to October and go to every other month? We will not meet in November. However, in October, we will discuss what we will set up in December for moving forward.
I'll vote yes, even though I think this is the worst of all worlds.
Okay. Lydia?
No.
Steve?
Yes. Yes.
Anita?
No.
Yes.
Glenn? Liz?
No.
Mary Lynn? Yes. Elisa?
No.
Carlos?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And Kathy? Yes. Yes. Okay. Our voting does go by majority, and it does have a majority of 8 yeses to 4 noes. So we will meet in October the next meeting will be in October. That is also a month in which the FAA technical group will be here in some configuration, so that hopefully the questions that we have alluded to today and are going to be collecting will be submitted in time so that they can respond at that point. Thank you all. Now, I have to find my agenda, and yes. Steve Alverson, did you wish to say something?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Actually, did we already go through? Yeah, we went through the public comment on it. So the update on the draft strategic plan and draft work program process. When we last left you, it was suggested that we take input from the roundtable members for both editing and updating the strategic plan, as well as doing the same on the draft work program. And then we also follow that up with a request for your priorities of the various items within the work program. In your packets are 2 versions of each document. One is a red line version that shows you the various pieces of input that we received from the various members who provided input to us on both the strategic plan and on the draft work program, as well as the clean version of what they would look like if all of those particular items were accepted. There were, in some cases, items that conflicted with each other. We tried to resolve those as best as we possibly could. So you have before you two new versions, if you will, or revised draft versions of both the strategic plan and draft work program. One potential thought of how to address this, and we don't really want to prolong this that much longer, is with all the input that you see in there in writing, you can certainly review that, take that into consideration, and then we can come back at the October meeting and perhaps finalize these documents. But if you're certainly ready to finalize them today based on the clean versions that are in the roundtable packet, that's something that you could do as a body. The priorities that we had for the work program, we received input, I think, from 6 different members. And if you could bring that up on the screen, Evan, that would be helpful as well. And this is something that we spent a little bit of time on at the last meeting, trying to get input, and thanks to all the members who provided that input. And a couple things about this. Clearly there's, from those members who provided input, you can see that the procedure development process, the Big Surfer overlay, the Pirate 2 is an issue that the Roundtable wants to track. Looking at the Select Committee and Ad Hoc Committee recommendations, and then a legislative subcommittee are sort of the first 5 items that rung out. We also received from Ed some of his priorities today, which aren't in this, and others of you may have more priorities. I think the importance of this is you as a body need to decide what you want us as your consultant to spend time on, and you as a body to spend time on focusing on. So we could arrange these any way in which you want that serves that purpose. You can focus on any of these. We could make some of these medium, low, medium, high, if that works a little bit better for you. The other aspect of this is you noted there are different categories that these fall into, and in the prioritization, you've basically given us input on them as a whole as opposed to within those categories, although I think Liz may have done that for us. So we could also put priorities into each of those categories. So that's kind of where we are in the process. We put this back to you in terms of where you'd like to go from here, having read the documents, or if you feel like you need more time to consider it, certainly you have the ability to do that perhaps at the next meeting.
I did want to emphasize for the public that this is still in draft form. So what's occurring today is not written in stone. At this point, Steve has made his presentation. I can open it up to the roundtable members to ask any questions. Steve Preminger, did you have any questions?
No, but please come back to me.
Okay, thank you. Microphones are on, off? Okay, good. Lisa?
Just one quick question. In terms of the prioritization, did you include, for those of us who gave priorities in the last session, or did you only count what people might have submitted since that time? Because I did mine in the meeting.
I believe this is the cumulative priorities that we got from everybody, both the last meeting and this one.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Carlos?
I guess something worthy of discussion from the roundtable is the overall purpose of this group. I noticed that in the ranking there's some specific projects, the Big Sur and the Pirate 2, which obviously are very important to our communities. But the big picture is really, when you look at the FAA environmental review process as an example, that's really the key to everything, right? So we're, on the one hand, we're spending time on specific procedures, but we don't have much impact to change those procedures because we have no influence over the FAA other than, just our comments, but really they're going to do what they're going to do. On the other hand, if we want to change the structure of the process by which they go about evaluating the procedures, that seems like it would be more effective. And that goes to the FAA environmental review process and number 1, the procedure development process. So it seems like that would be a good discussion to have about how much time do we spend on specific procedures and how much do we spend on the overall problem that we're having, which I think is the fundamental issue. And a fundamental issue that my board has is just how effective are we really going to be unless we change the whole structure of how the FAA is evaluating these procedures. So I think that's something that we should talk about, because there's kind of apples and oranges here on this list.
Some of these items are definitely ongoing. They're what are expected from a roundtable, and to toss them in with whether we're going to talk about procedure development or environmental review is the apples and oranges that you allude to. Steve, can you give us any insight on how other roundtables deal with this sort of apples and oranges situation?
Sure. The common approach is to group these as we've done, and some of the roundtables members have recommended into various categories. You know, for example, flight procedures, administrative, education, and then within each of those groups, there's a priority that's set to those. And some of these are items that will happen regardless of the priority that's put on them or not. For example, keeping the website up to date, that's going to happen. We don't need the roundtable to tell us to make that a priority. It's just going to go. So it's really those areas where I think, as Carlos points out, that the roundtable may want to take a stand from a policy standpoint that are really critical, and then also from the standpoint of what would drive any technical work that we would do. If, again, you'd like us to run AEDT and look at before and after noise exposure for a particular procedure, that's some place where, again, we would want direction from the roundtable.
Also, it's going to be dependent on how South Flow or the Select Committee items run through the FAA procedure, too, as to whether we will be taking action at any time. And I think that's what you're alluding to. Those are the things that we do not have any control over. Is that right? But we need to also say that, yes, whether it's nighttime, whether it's Pirate, whether it's Select Committee, whether it's South Flow, whether it's Loop, that we have an idea of what's important to our members as a whole, and that we're reflecting that in our work program. Any other questions of Steve at this point regarding this? Glenn?
I'll try and say this is a question as opposed to a comment, but I think if we're discussing this, I think I have somewhat of an agreement with Carlos about trying to take a look at the macro picture of it. The problem is that how you get the detail of understanding some of that macro stuff is you really have to go in and dive into the detail of some of these, existing problems right now. And it's almost, those are the examples for instructional purposes that lets us get to that detail that then we can go ahead and is what is clarified here. It's this overall procedure piece of what it is. So I'm not sure we can really separate the two. The comment I would make is that somehow San Jose South Flow is listed 14th on this list, and that doesn't work for me. It's got to be higher in terms of what goes on. That is a big part of here the South Bay of what's going on. It doesn't have to be number one, although that'd be cool. But as we do this, it's somehow got to get higher into the list of this, and I would encourage us, if we're going to be asked to submit our votes or ranking of this stuff, in the next time this comes back, for transparency to the public, could we have the list and then the ranking that each member went ahead and had for those items, so that we go ahead and are transparent to the public to let them see how we've ranked all of these materials.
Glenn, would you also want to break it down so that you pull out the items that pull away things like website maintenance?
If you could go ahead and try and separate what I would refer to as mechanical things, that I think that'd be great, because those are kind of going to happen, or they need to. So then we can get to kind of the real type things. That'd be fine.
So in our packets on page 59, I believe it is, we actually have an empty page. 58? Thank you. And there are some of us who have not indicated what our priorities are. If you would put those priorities in, or even if you want to, after this discussion, reorganize your priorities and pass those sheets down, I think that would be very helpful. Glenn has made, in conversation with me, the suggestion that really we should be looking at the top half dozen. Well, you said 5, I'll push to 6. I think that would be a really good use of our time now while we are here. I'm not trying to hold you hostage, but it's really good to get the input, and it would be beneficial, I think, to the group. And Glenn's is in. Who's going to be second? Anybody? Good. Pass it on down. Any further questions of the process? Lydia, I see your light on.
Oh, I wanted to ask if environmental review is part of the procedure development process?
Lydia, I would assume that would be a big part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a comment, Madam Chair, in
Yes,
terms
Anita.
of there are things in here that are kind of routinized, they have to be done, like you've mentioned, the website. To me, and I think I sent this comment to you and Steve privately, or, not a part of my other stuff, that some of these are things that we as a roundtable can do discreetly and entirely, basically, on our own resources. And some of these are dependent on FAA information. And so to me, that sorts into two piles. And everything that has to do with the relying on FAA resources kind of takes on its own priority, because we have to be able to respond to that in a timely fashion whenever the opportunity arises, or whenever we get provided information, so that you have both kind of an urgency issue as well as a priority in the grander sense, as Carlos said, because I agree 99% with what he said earlier, but at the same time, our public is expecting us to provide input to the FAA on procedures as they come up. And if we don't do that, then I think we have failed. We failed our public. So I almost think like there's two pots here, maybe three pots we should be looking at, instead of trying to integrate it all into one giant list.
Good point. Anyone else have questions at this point? Lydia? Yes.
Actually, after what Steve said, shouldn't it be voted on together versus separated? The environmental development process, environmental review.
Yeah, I think your question was, would we assume that environmental review would be a part of the procedure development process? And I think it would be a big part of that.
So it's all together, and it's going to be decided on every procedure and
Well, there are
determining.
Yeah, there are procedures that have some level of environmental review. As we heard, there are CADXs, and then there are others that it might go further than that. And in each of those instances, I would expect that the roundtable would want to provide input into that environmental review process.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the document we have, the environmental review is a part of an educational section.
Right.
And I don't really think that's what Lydia's talking about, and I don't think that's what Carlos is talking about. And I know it's not what I would be talking
Right.
about.
Yeah.
On the voting list, they're listed separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're listed separately because the environmental review process is an educational element, and I don't think that's what we're talking about. That's not what we
It's
want.
an impact level, yeah.
It's much deeper and bigger than that.
So do you have a suggestion, Lydia, that you would like to see that would help clarify this?
Well, rather than, as what Anita said, rather than having it as a educational, it should be used as a way to analyze and to determine what the impacts are to the general public, to the community on the ground.
So you're seeing it move from D up to A, basically, according to this. Oops, okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, good. Thank you for the clarification. All right. I have one speaker slip, since we're probably working, and this will give us some time. Jennifer Landesman.
Hi, thank you, and I really appreciate all of your questions and comments about environmental review. A little backdrop to what the purpose of this group is. It is a follow-up to the Select Committee, and the Select Committee came about when the problem started in 2014. We called attention to the problem and we engaged our congressional electives and the airports, and they said, well, you don't have any complaints, so you don't have a problem. We said, no, we do have a problem, and oops, I forgot the big article in the Palo Alto Weekly in 2014 when this happened. So I want to give you a little sense of complaints in March of 2019, okay? These are just the stop jet noise complaints. Palo Alto is the blue bar, Los Altos is the pink bar, and Santa Cruz is the black bar. So Los Altos is a little bit higher than Santa Cruz. If we put Los Altos on top of Palo Alto, you know where we are in terms of the Mid-Peninsula complaints. And this is the reason why the Select Committee was a regional issue. It was not just to solve one particular route over the other. I'm confused about who does ADT. I believe that FAA does ADT. I believe that that is part of the environmental screening. That is a much better source for having a common set of understanding of what the baselines are. So I think that needs to be clarified. And I'm really concerned about the timeline issue, that while we're asking questions about how the process works, procedures are happening. And my suggestion was a while ago that there should be some sort of window to not publish procedures without having had this discussion. And that's what I would just ask FAA to consider, that if you're doing things because of noise, let's do them with a common understanding and not just rush to publish on the IFB gateway, which is way too late and we don't have a common understanding. I think we're going to get somewhere if we can all talk, you know, in order for our officials to be able to represent what's happening, that data is important first.
Thank you very much. I have a request from Jennifer.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
I know, every time I leave, there's another Jennifer.
We're twins.
I didn't mean to be rude when I said no last name, but it does seem to help. Or can we refer to you as Jennifer T?
Yes.
Okay, from here on out, just for clarification then. Thanks.
I'm here to mirror what Glenn had said. Is there, oh, there's a mic here. Got it, thank you. I'm here to mirror what Glenn had mentioned about San Jose South Flow being number 14 on this list. When this body was created, it was created for two purposes, because of the Select Committee and because of the San Jose Airport Ad Hoc Committee. There are people here who are impacted by San Jose Airport as well. And we cannot repeat another SFO roundtable here. That is wrong. SFO roundtable is already taking care of many of these San Francisco items, and I understand it's a priority here, but so is San Jose. And to drop this down to 14, I'm sorry, it makes it clear that these folks here aren't thinking about what this committee was created for. So please, please, I'm telling you, if it is that low on the priority list, I think Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto, many of those communities are going to be outraged. So please consider that when you're looking at this ranking. Thank you.
Thank you. Darlene, are you going to request to speak? Darlene Yapler.
Thank you. There absolutely has to be weighting on procedures, because if it just affects one or two or three cities, that's important. That's exactly what this next-gen problem is, right? Everybody had the noise, and now just a few are suffering, so victory. We can't duplicate the same problem here. We have to give credence. What if we moved all the noise to your city? It still should be a priority for this group, and I think procedures are important. I also think, to the point that Carlos made, is process is important. But you can solve both of those. You can work and have subcommittees that distill more of this content to propose questions and so on. We're spending a lot of time at this higher level, and I think there needs to be time spent in working groups that can be smaller and still accomplish the procedures and still accomplish the systemic problem of the process. The other thing, it is very confusing about the environmental review process, because it should be listed as part of the procedure development process. And training should be its own thing, which has different categories. But putting it up there, you confuse the vote. I'm sure some people thought environmental review is procedure development process. So I think there needs to be a recalibration. Again, procedures have to be a priority. Systematic problems, changing legislation, I agree. That has to be core. But they both can be priorities, and I think we can approach this more efficiently and effectively than the whole group discusses everything every time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Darlene, can you hand the slip in? We need that for, all right. Do I see anyone else that wants to speak? All right, we'll go back to the round table. I have 2 copies. Anybody else want to bring something in? Hand them in. We're ready? Good, thank you. And looking to this side, thank you. Okay, good. And come on down. It's good. Lydia, we're going to just have to move you down. It's nothing personal, but with us are missing a person, we never know for sure. Steve Scharf, could you clarify something for me? You said that you were on the select committee. What select committee were you on?
The one that Glenn chaired.
You
Ad
meant the
hoc.
ad hoc
I'm sorry,
council.
ad hoc.
Okay, good,
Okay.
good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes. Good, because Ed and I missed you. Ed, you have your microphone on. Lisa
Yeah,
does too.
I do. You know, we started this meeting, Glenn and Anita made some comments that you know, if we're going to accomplish something at the end when we walk away from all this, it's got to be about noise. I mean, that's how we measure whether we've been successful. I mean, I listened to what you said, yet when I look at this results, all the noise stuff is down in the middle at best. Okay, so I mean, I don't even know if it's properly addressed as a category, so maybe I'm suspect that the categories may not be right. But if we're not trying to focus on what you said, which was a higher goal to aim for representatives or Congress or FAAers, do something to change noise, that's the only way we're going to make people in our communities happy, is if we reduce the noise. And we're not, you know, I don't care if we have the best website on the planet and we're all trained and we know an OPD from anything else. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are we going to be successful in reducing noise? So those are things I'd like to see go to the top. And to Glenn's point, you know, I'm sorry that you know, that the South Flow is not South Flow doesn't affect us, so it's hard for us to weigh in. But I could be sensitive that it matters to you, so therefore it matters to me. Just like when we came over here with Surfer and how it affected us, the Select Committee people were responsive to our concerns. I don't understand why Surfer's on the top of this list, because in my mind, the full working group met. That's in process. It's something that's on its way, which in the FAA, if you got them working on something, that's a good thing, okay? So I don't know why we need to be so on top of that. That process is voted on, it's been approved, it's working on it. We're going to see how that comes and what they deliver to us. And the rest of these, you know, it was difficult for me to fill out my sheet, and maybe everybody else struggled trying to figure out what was a priority, but I just want to say that if it's not about dealing with noise, then we're missing the boat.
Yes, Michelle.
I'm 100% echo Ed Bartov. The comments, I definitely agree that the reason we are here, or I'm here, is understanding to mitigate the noise for our residents. If you see my voting, that the work program, my #1 choice is baseline noise data. We got to collect the right data. FAA does not do this noise data collection, so they defer to the airport, which I just learned today. That's why I think to have the airport participate is very important. We got to reduce the noise. And that's my vote. My #1 vote is to reduce noise. My #2 vote, reduce noise. My 3rd vote is still reduce noise. That's all I have to say.
Lisa, and then Kathy.
Are you looking for comments just on this or the entire topic? Because I had comments about the strategic plan and the work plan.
Just the priorities
Just
today.
the priorities.
We don't have time, unfortunately.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest a way to move forward on these.
Yes.
So I agree, noise is the top priority, and certainly for me, South Flow is right there at the top of my list. I did have tracking select committee and ad hoc committee recommendations. To me, that seems like that's overlap with South Flow. But yeah, if we're not here to reduce noise, I don't know why we're here.
And Kathy.
Thank you, Chair. I definitely concur with a lot of the comments that have been made. Glenn, if it makes you happy, I pushed South Flow up to the top on my list. And because as much as it doesn't really impact Santa Clara as much as it does, you know, other cities in the Bay Area, it still has an impact. But I definitely, you know, concur, you know, with the noise I mean, that's why we're here, and that's what we need to accomplish. But at the last meeting we had, we talked about, you know, what we could do, what we could accomplish as a body, because, you know, we do want to be successful. I totally agree. And frankly, I actually put Big Sur towards the top, because I felt like that's something that we are close to, that's been worked on and is close to being accomplished and can show the success of this group. So that was my feeling for wanting to put some of these projects that have been in the works for a while, to put them towards the top to show that the roundtable has been successful. So that was my thinking.
Kathy, thank you for bringing that up. I'm not going to take the time to read this letter, but I would ask you to look in your packets. There is a letter that I have signed that is addressed to Mr. George Wiley, having to do with the resolution that he sought from the school district. And I will certainly share it with you, but it is in the packet. It's under Santa Clara, Santa Cruz County's Airport Community Roundtable. It's dated August 28th, and it is addressed to Mr. George Wiley. And it does have to do with what this roundtable will be doing, address or not addressing the matters that came about as a result of the select committee. Are there any further questions about priorities? Yes, Liz.
I just had a quick thought that would it be simpler to prioritize within each category? So prioritize noise, prioritize legislative process, prioritize education/outreach, and maybe then everything has a priority because everything's important, and that way we can break it into groups and prioritize it that way.
It's a good suggestion. It's very good. Do you need your things handed back? Steve, what works best for you now at this point?
Madam Chair, I think that works fine for us. I guess the question, and I'm looking at Evan here because we're both looking at this, is there a way in which we can take what we've gotten so far and do that within the categories? You know, or do we need the roundtable members to do we need to recategorize the list in categories and have them vote within each of those categories?
I would say that we have to collect all the rankings first, and then we can put it into our overall table, and it's a little bit easier to categorize after we've gotten all those numbers, those rankings. But yeah, it might be difficult to do it currently.
So we should send out a new form that has the categories. And
yes,
then
to clarify, these rankings right now are based off of some of the old work priorities and action items. So we've gotten 3 responses from members with the current ranking system. That informs this current list, but I think we need the final version before we can accurately depict the rankings. So,
okay.
Does that work? Yes, Lydia.
How will you handle surprises that come up? You know, for example, the surprises like new procedures. You know, in July they announced the 050 flights, Oakland procedure, the Oakland 050 procedure. How if something like this come up, how do we address it on this priority list?
That's a great question, Lydia. And the idea of the work program is that it's a longer-term view. We like to revisit it typically once a year. But in instances where something comes up, a member like yourself could say, you know, this just popped up. I think it's an important issue that the roundtable should consider. I think A, we should put it in the work program, and B, it should have X priority. And then just like we're doing now, the roundtable would discuss whether it should be in the work program and what priority it should get. But that happens on a regular basis, and so the work program is a living document that gets updated on an ongoing basis, but at least once a year.
Thank you.
Any further questions or input at this point? Michelle, your light's on. Okay, thank you. All right. What's the wish then that we, Steve, what would you categorize this as action item now from this?
So what I've heard is that, I propose that we don't necessarily have the roundtable decide at this meeting whether the strategic plan is final or the work program is final unless the roundtable feels that they are, and then they can certainly vote on that. If that's not the case, they want to take it home and review the input that other roundtable members provided. We can bring it up at the October meeting. Separately from that, it sounds like we're going to send out another survey to recategorize these priorities within each of the categories that they fall in, and then bring that back to the roundtable at that time. So I think that's kind of where we got into, unless members want to move forward.
Lisa, and then Anita.
Yeah, I would like to see if we can perhaps take it a different approach to the strategic plan and the work plan. I feel like it's really difficult to have all of us provide edits on these documents and then try to rationalize them. I think this draft we have now certainly is making progress from the previous one we had, but I would suggest that maybe we form, and this is in the interest of both time and money, maybe we have a subcommittee. Take all the input, if there's any additional input, and have some of us just together and crank them out for the next meeting. And I'm happy to be part of that team. Since there are several of us that seem to provide a lot of input. Perhaps there's others that want to be part of that. But I think that might be more efficient, and it helps leverage the budget.
Very much. I appreciate that. Lydia.
I would volunteer for that.
Lydia,
Subcommittee.
Lisa, I'm volunteering. And Anita, are you wanting to speak?
I'll
or are you
toss my hat in the ring.
Okay. I think that's enough. We want to make sure we're not committing any kind of Brown Act, so.
I do have a
comment.
question. I do have a question for Steve. Is there something, and I don't mean this in any sort of pejorative connotation, is there something magical about the 4 categories that you put? Because admin is a category, aircraft ops kinds of stuff is, and procedures is a category, noise is a category. And since we've been talking about noise as the kind of be-all and end-all goal, and then education's a separate one, is there some specific reason why you picked these 4?
Oh my God. I would say the specific reasons we did when we first looked at these different items, it seemed like they fell well into these categories, but we are completely open to the roundtable making them whatever categories they want and how they fit. I mean, this is your work program, so it's really up to you to make this work for you.
There was one other thing that, also, they're very similar to the ones that other roundtables have set up through the years.
Yeah.
And that was one of the guiding principles, too.
Correct.
They, with one exception, they follow the lines of San Francisco Airport, which is helpful. Also, it's very good for them for when they're figuring out who they're allocating resources to, because they're set up to speak in those categories. All right. I'm going to look for approval. Do we need to make a motion to do it the subcommittee?
So, Madam Chair, the Robert's Rules of Order in Brown Act requirements is, I think what you want to do is create an ad hoc committee for this.
Yes.
So that, and you could do that as chair, create this ad hoc committee, name the people who are members on it, designate a chair for it, which I think Lisa would be perfect for that.
Yes.
And then the committee is responsible for reporting back to the larger roundtable. It can't take, the ad hoc committee cannot take any action without reporting back. And if you were to conclude your work before the October meeting, that committee could report back and then the roundtable could take action. There'd be no requirement to notice the meeting for Brown Act requirements because you're an ad hoc committee.
Very good. So I have Lisa, Anita, Lydia, and myself. Was there anyone else? Okay, good. We'll take care of that. And do you, Steve, want these? I mean, will this be of any use to you that we've done now, or are we going to recycle the paper?
We'll take those for the time being, but we will send out another version of this for roundtable member response.
Okay. And now that we've seen how it falls out when we only get a few responses, and we appreciate what Ed has brought about looking at, and others have mentioned about looking regionally to everything, I think you understand why it's important that we all participate and send in the things once we get them. So thank you. I believe we are actually at number 6, which is member discussion, and we're only about an hour off. Woohoo! So, are there any members that have any items to discuss? Ed?
I just want to make a quick comment about, there's a large packet of letters in here regarding Surfer, and a lot of people making comments about what that happened and didn't happen. And I looked around the room earlier, and there was almost a quorum in here of the select committee people happened to be in the building at one time. Still a couple members out there recognize you. There's a lot of controversy about what happened and what was said and what was the impact of what we voted on. And I just want to acknowledge the letter here written by Raquel Gervin, and just want to read this one section. Bear with me for a minute. It says here, the Phase 2 report categorized committee recommendations for the Serper path to be moved to the BSR track, and the committee recommendation, this is the committee that voted 8-4, that 9 specific criteria be considered, and the key word here is considered. Considered with the movement of the Surfer flight to BSR and feasible and could be implemented in the long term. The characterization of this result of the committee's 8-4 vote was to approve the recommendation, and that was the action we took. And the FAA's determination that the procedure was initially technically feasible. As noted in the Phase 2 report, the FAA is willing to consider the 9 criteria that the committee identified and recommended. However, the design of a new procedure is ultimately subject to FAA design criteria and safety operational requirements. I think the FAA is adamant about everything they do this way. This is standard language for them. And people have been writing this barrage of letters that, it's after the fact. A lot of the members that wrote these letters were not on the subcommittee. And I think that to the members that were on the subcommittee, the one thing that I always try to hold to is what was the intent of what a body meant? And the intent of when that measure passed, and whether people want to come back and change their votes at a later time, I think we all know politically that's not something that we try to adhere to. So I just want to reiterate that I support Raquel Gervin's response, and I reiterate that the committee took a vote, and that was the action, and I look forward to the full working group working through that whole process and acting upon what the elected officials and our government representatives enable us to do. So thank you.
You, Ed. With that in mind, I actually am going to follow up with the letter that I have written to Mr. Wiley. I want to thank him for his August 8th, 2019 letter and accompanying resolution regarding the San Lorenzo Valley Unified School District concern about suggested replacement of Surfer arrival with a new arrival route over the Big Sur ground track. As indicated in the resolution, the recommendation of the Federal Aviation Administration to move the Surfer arrival to the BSR ground track came from the Select Committee on South Bay Arrivals, the Select Committee. The Select Committee was convened and disbanded prior to the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Counties Airport Community Roundtable first meeting in February of 2019. The roundtable was formed to serve as a follow-on public forum to receive and consider community input regarding aircraft noise impacts. The understanding during the formation of the SCSC Roundtable was that the Select Committee recommendations to the FAA would not be revisited by the SCSC Roundtable. Essentially, the FAA was moving forward with examining the Select Committee recommendations, which it would run through its flight procedure evaluation process. As a result, the potential moving of the Surfer arrival to a new arrival route over or near the BSR arrival is currently under review by the FAA. It is important to note that the Roundtable has no authority to relocate or replace the current Surfer arrival with a new arrival track over or near the BSR ground track. The authority to create, amend, or eliminate flight procedures within the National Airspace System resides solely with the FAA. In addition, the Roundtable has taken no actions since its first meeting in February to recommend to the FAA the creation, amendment, or elimination of any flight procedure. The Roundtable's role in the FAA's procedure evaluation process is to provide a forum through which the FAA can report on its efforts, and the members of the Roundtable and the public can provide input to the FAA regarding the FAA's work. Should the FAA's procedure evaluation process
advance beyond the preliminary stage in which matters such as safety and flyability are concerned. The Roundtable may then be asked by the FAA to provide suggestions regarding the potential public outreach venues and groups that should be contacted. Should the FAA's effort to evaluate surfer arrival produce a publicly available environmental analysis, be assured that the Roundtable as a whole and its individual members will carefully review the document for potential noise impacts. The Roundtable may or may not choose at that time to provide the FAA feedback on its analysis, especially as it relates to changes in aircraft noise exposure and other environmental factors, including air emissions. However, the Roundtable will not be reopening the Select Committee process on this procedure or any of the committee's other recommendations, so that the Roundtable members, the FAA, and the members of the public can understand the San Lorenzo Valley Unified School District's concerns. We have posted your letter and the accompanying resolution to the SCSC Roundtable website. I thank you for sharing the school district's concern and trust this clarifies the SCSC Roundtable's standing in this matter. Signed sincerely by me as chair, Mary Lynn Bernald. So I hope this will put to rest some of the issues. To be honest, we have received, as Ed has said, so much correspondence regarding this matter that that's where a majority part of our budget has gone. And if we really want to get to the point that we are talking about the issues that we have declared individually up here today, we have to be able to free up that time to address those matters. And so with that, that ends my discussion today. Lydia, your light is on. Do you have anything else?
So I appreciate both what you both said about this issue. Although I'm reading the mayor of Los Altos Hills' letter, which states in here that in the days, I'm sorry, it's on page 2, second paragraph, in the days leading up to the final vote on this recommendation, the Select Committee received assurances during their proceedings from then FAA Regional Administrator Glenn Martin and his staff that these 9 noise mitigation criteria were all feasible. In casting the deciding vote to adopt these recommendations, former Los Altos Hill Mayor and Select Committee member Gary Waldeck relied on these assurances of feasibility from the FAA, as well as those of Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, that steps will not be taken to implement these changes without regional consensus. And I wasn't on the Select Committee, so I'm just trying to kind of get clarification. There's these two, oppositions going on, conflicts, and, as a new member on this committee, on this roundtable, I want to make sure that I'm representing all voices. As you know, noise does not know boundaries. So I think it's just not so clear to me what's going on.
If we had more time, which is the big caveat all the time, we would have been able to not just give you the overview that Chris Zanardi did that was so good with the Select Committee, but we could have given you a background as to how things came about the way they did. There was a hope that somewhere out there the FAA could find a resolution that met all 9 criteria. And that came about with number 4. Ed, back me up if there's anything, where we said that if number 4 occurred under 1.2, they would have to, under no circumstances, they would have to absolutely meet all 9 criteria. During the course of the Select Committee meetings, we knew that Menlo was problematic. We always knew it. And we continued to say, do what you can. We knew that Palo Alto was getting hit the hardest. They were in the perfect storm. And we said, okay, we have these 9 criteria. Yes, they should be considered by the FAA. However, the bottom line with the FAA, and we've heard it over and over again, is it safe? Is it feasible? Is it safe not just for all, is it safe for all the different aircraft? And that's another problem that's a factor in here. There are so many overriding factors of how you land a variety of aircraft with a variety of pilots. And so we know that safe and feasibility have to override everything. And we, as a body, voted 8-4 at that particular time, knowing that it had to be safe, it had to be feasible, and however those 9 criteria fell out during the course of this procedure analysis, we supported the FAA in saying, yes, we do not want another Asiana crash. And so I believe, and Ed, please, that we were aware that all 9 may or may not have been feasible and safe, but we 8-4 said we need to move forward. Had that item number 4, the pine line or the blue line as it was known during that time, been something that the FAA had come up with, then they were going to be held to the fire of meeting the requirements of all 9 criteria.
Madam Chair.
Well, if Ed could speak, because he was there too.
I'll be really quick, okay? The FAA is only going to give you so much guarantee of what they can and can't do. And I'm not trying to put you in a bad spot. I appreciate everything that you offered us. But given the information we had available at that meeting, there was no guarantee that they could deliver. They said they will consider those options, and as long as it was safe and feasible, they would invoke that procedure. And I believe that's what they're trying to do right now. They may come back to us in 18 to 24 months and say, this is something that doesn't work for us. And if that's the case, well, then they would come back to this body to try to make a better decision or some other kind of solution. But given the information then and given the limitations of the FAA and what they can and can't do, and they cannot do everything, and they didn't know at the time. I mean, we know right now we want an answer. It takes time to get an answer because they have to research. So we had the best information. We made the vote made on the best information. And I'm a little put off by the fact that someone says, well, that we were guaranteed this was going to happen, because we all knew there was not a guarantee. They were going to consider the 9 options. Keyword, consider.
I would like to comment on the letter that we wrote to FAA and also CC to the relevant bodies. The letter that, well, I'm here this year, so I was not on the previous select committee sitting after Gary Waldeck. All of the things that I have gathering, the things that I know about is that Gary has told me that 8-4 voting, he was the last vote on the 8th vote, which is a supermajority, and he does have the deciding vote when it comes to him. He voted yes because he was based on the assumption that the FAA will be obligated to meet all 9 criteria. However, as the course going on, right now, what I heard is his understanding of obligated to meeting 9 criteria is not true. It's just consider we'll do our best to meet. If we don't, then we don't.
Michelle, if I may, we're over an hour. We're not going to relitigate. That was the reason that I read the letter at this point. We certainly can bring this up on an agenda at another time when the FAA has proceeded with their items, and we see, just as Ed said, but I do not have the time. I have staff here that needs to catch a train. I also have other members here that I need to meet with after this meeting. So if we can agree to disagree at this point, I think for the purpose of being efficient and responsible at this meeting, we have received your mayor's letters. We have received numerous letters from your city council, and they have been heard, received, recorded, and I think we need to move on. I have speaker slips for item 6. I have speaker slips for item 7. And I am hoping that you will honor what I read today, take that back to your council, and consider what it is, and also the comments that came from my fellow committee member, Ed Botteroff, at the time.
Madam Chair,
yes.
could I just ask Steve something? It's a member discussion item, not
Yes.
to do with
Yes.
the previous. Can we have you look into what is Oakland 4, which is on the page 7 of the packet, page 7, Oakland 4. It would, I think maybe it'd be valuable to understand if Oakland 4 impacts any of our member communities.
And Lydia, the chair basically directs the work that we do, so
Okay.
you can direct it to the chair, and then she can decide if that's something she wants us to do.
Would you?
Please. Just keep the mail coming in, Lydia. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are on item 6, and Jennifer, if you really need to speak.
Yeah, I do.
Of course.
Because the BSR vote was raised. And I just want to read something, a press release from congressional members after the recommendation. They said, while the FAA has committed to designing the routing over the previous BSR lateral track with the highest feasible altitudes and with the lowest possible noise impact, the Select Committee has recommended that, this is underlined, at a minimum, the route be no lower and the noise impact no greater than the previous BSR. We were also in the room, so were hundreds of my fellow Palo Alto residents. Menlo is a big deal. It's not because of the Asiana crash that it went to 4,000. It's because, and thanks to some of the questions that were asked in the Select Committee, it was because the airlines determined that they needed to go lower in order to have more throughput. So please, I think it's really important, if we're going to have any basis of trust here, for the discussion to be politically motivated, offensive, defensive of the route. This is about noise. And that noise, I didn't show you the complaints that got this all started. If we're left with 2 or 3 communities that are left with all the noise because it wasn't fixed, Los Altos is not going to have a solution because the altitudes went down, and those altitudes are not going any higher. So we really have to get to that data, and I really resent, it would not be good faith if what you did was work on safety and efficiency during the Select Committee.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to item number 7, which is comments to the public for items not on the agenda. And I have Jackie Rice. You're still here? Thank you.
Hello to everyone, and I am here as a resident of Felton, which is in the San Lorenzo Valley area. I have lived in this community for almost 40 years, with many residents living in our mountains for generations. There are 33,000 people that live in the San Lorenzo Valley. That includes Felton, Ben Lomond, Brookdale, Boulder Creek, Lompico, and Mount Herman, and are unsuspecting citizens of the future jet path changes of Surfer to BSR, as what happened to the population that lives under Surfer today. I'm going to give you just random thoughts here. The Santa Cruz City Council, the Santa Cruz Board of Supervisors, the San Lorenzo Valley School District, and Los Altos Hills, including 3 mayors, have all publicly stated their position against moving Surfer to the BSR ground path. I would like to reiterate to this committee that the flight path plane concentration of BSR is completely different than the Surfer route. There's less planes, higher altitudes, of what that will be shifted over to the ground path community. I am also a school board trustee for the San Lorenzo Valley's 2,360 students, and we are responsible for the education of our students, including their ability to focus in class with 180 planes a day flying overhead. That's going to be hard. The Select Committee vote to move the Surfer to BSR was passed contingent on those 9 criteria being met. Mr. Leopold reassured everyone on the committee that he had direct information from Glenn Martin that these would all be feasible, and that's why the votes were cast. I was at every meeting for that. I like the idea of requesting a working group to share jet flight path, dispersion of the jet flight path noise over the San Jose area, and it would be great if we had do something about the ground noise over the Santa Cruz County area. And I didn't know if any of you guys knew any of this information, but there's a lot of it on. And our community was in complete vote of opposite of where we were, 2 to 2. And it was supposed to be
Thank you very much.
in agreement according to
Thank you
Anna
very
issue.
much. Darlene Yapley.
One of the important tasks of the roundtable is to monitor the updates from the FAA, And on the July update, there was an announcement of an Oak 050 procedure, which we're hoping to get more information on. I'd like to see that this actually triggered this body, because it did happen in July. These are the types of things that fall from the sky. Not only are we trying to get rid of noise, we seem to be getting more noise, which I think is a big issue. I encourage you to work collaboratively with the San Francisco Roundtable, because those of us here, Palo Alto, Mountain View, Sunnyvale, could be impacted by this departure flight from Oakland, as well as several cities in the San Francisco Roundtable. So this is a theme. Number two, the FAA states it will distribute public information via the IFP gateway. How can this be an appropriate vehicle for informing the public when the information posted on the gateway is both incomplete and technical, that no member of the general public could possibly understand its implications? If you look at the letter that was all sent to you, I guess, this morning, there's a Google Earth document, but it does not label the impacted cities. You can't look at the document and know whether your city is impacted by a procedure. This is the type of information that should be on the gateway. We can't hire the public expensive consultants to interpret what the diagram says. So this is a huge process problem. And airplane noise is not only about ground tracks and altitudes. This is the issue. It's also about things about how fast the airplane has to descend to get to the airport, and this is what creates noise. These are the things that are not in the IFP gateway. These are the things that are the big ahas when we look at the ground track or whatever, there's other issues. And the other comment about the Big Sur overlay, I think it's important to be a priority because we don't know really what they're going to do, and I think there's a theme here. You ask for this, you get this, and there's unintended consequences. Thank you.
Very quickly. It'll be very beneficial. Lydia mentioned the Oakland 050. If you continue to submit your concerns as her being your representative, that definitely helps promote the items coming through the system more efficiently. Thank you very much. Jacqueline Dreyer? I'm sorry, I'm mutilating your name. It's what?
It's like Bear.
Mayor. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I was just wanting to address the same as the noise. This is all new to me, and what you're talking about, I don't understand a lot of the what you had on here, but now I'm understanding a little bit more, except for the Loop 5 and Pirate and all that. But anyway, there's just been a lot more. I'm Almaden Valley, King Rimmon area, and I too have noticed a lot more noise that's been coming through during the nighttime. I see a lot of airplanes because I'm looking at the mountains, and I can see it a lot more planes going often. But at nighttime too, it seems like the planes are going longer hours. So I thought it used to be 10 o'clock when it used to be no more flights going in or out, and then 11, and the other night 11:24 at night it woke me up, and I don't know whether it's because, like you said, you're talking about flight changes, and whether the sound is bouncing off the mountains coming into the valley now, and of course what Jackie had said about Santa Cruz and Fulton and all that. But I just wanted to make note that I don't know if it's because of the flight changes and how we can change that back, why it was changed. So many flights are going over now. Somebody else was saying that it might be because of buildings being higher built downtown San Jose that they had to start shifting things around. But I would just like it to go back the way it was, because now it just seems a lot more because of the sound. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Landisman, followed by Jennifer T., and finally George Wiley. That'll finish it up with the cards that I have.
Sorry, I don't know which item it is. I guess it's 7, but I want to just correct something or mention. Safety, of course, is everyone's priority. I want to make sure that, yes, of course, we all assume that safety is key. But let's talk about the safety deficit that was created by increasing throughput, right? So asking us to make up for the safety that was taken away, we have to also speak to that, but definitely, I think the idea was that we would find routes that would be safe, equally safe or safer, and also address noise issues. So whether that comes from a variety of elements, that's where we're trying to get to. So I just wanted to mention that, that is the key thing about this whole concept, but the pattern of what we ask for and what we're getting is really going to erode at the work that we're trying to do. So I really hope that the priorities that are going to be, the 050, for example. During the whole select committee, one of the recommendations was that we would have a procedure that would go over the bay. You guys might recall that, at least even for the nighttime, to use the full length of the bay. Instead of that diagonal from Surfer or BSR, for there to be an entry at the farther point south, which with GBAS, for example, supposedly it could be even higher, as much as 10,000 feet above. And I know San Jose doesn't want this, but it was a proposal, a proof of concept. Let's think about it. Well, the 050 brings all the planes in the opposite direction. And if you hear about it, they go, well, they've always done that. But no, but also the planes were also going north over the bay, which is right and what is fair. All of a sudden, the roundtable, the SFO roundtable gets the use of the bay, but the peninsula cities don't. So that's why this has to get addressed.
Jennifer T. And George Wiley, if you can be ready, and Rosanna Bruin, please.
I'm here to speak about supersonic civil commercial flights. Since 1973, there's been a ban against civil commercial supersonic flights over U.S. land. But in 2018, Congress mandated the FAA to examine a process that would ultimately allow these supersonic flights over U.S. land. Supersonic flights, as if you're familiar with them, create a sonic boom when those flights fly faster than the speed of sound. So a transcontinental flight going between, say, Los Angeles and New York could potentially, if that flight is flying faster than the speed of sound, create what's called a carpet boom across the entire United States while they are exceeding the speed of sound. NASA is conducting tests for human annoyance called quiet sonic booms, but you could still potentially hear them from the ground. It is clear that the FAA is trying to make it so that sonic booms would not be obvious from ground, but the industry is pushing against the FAA. They are pushing on regulations that would allow sonic booms to be perceptible from the ground. We need to make sure that that does not occur. The other thing that's happening is the industry is pushing against the FAA about airplane noise standards. Industry is clearly trying to go back to 1977 or earlier noise standards. We need to stop that, and that would be for subsonic speeds on these planes. This would be backward. This would cause a problem, and Next Gen makes the problem even worse since it could concentrate these.
Thank you. George Wiley. And Rosanna.
Hi, George Wiley, San Lorenzo Valley. Thank you for reading the letter. I would like to suggest, and Mr. Batorf has made comment about what the background was when the Select Committee was hearing the issue about Surfer Big Sur. And there were a lot of suggestions. If they're only recommendations, it's not a big deal. It's, they'll do what they can. Let's be nice about this. And we aren't going to relitigate the issue of Surfer Big Sur. I hear that. But let's at least try to obey it, okay? Can we try to obey the words of the Select Committee, which are, the Select Committee recommends that the arrivals to San Francisco from the south use the Big Sur ground track for a new next-gen procedure that incorporates the criteria contained in Recommendation 2 below. Then there's a list of 9 criteria, okay? Recommendation 1 incorporates Recommendation 2 as part of Recommendation 1, okay? That is what the Select Committee said, that they go together. One does not exist without 2. However, we're hearing words like, well, they did the first one, but the second one they're going to try to do, okay? That's not supporting what the select committee directed. And if you're not going to relitigate it, fine. But please try to appear like you're going to support that the FAA obey what was written by the select committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosanna.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Bruni. I represent Save Our Skies Santa Cruz. I want to remind the Roundtable that the Santa Cruz and Santa Clara Roundtable was convened at the pleasure of our congressionals. The congressionals directed the Roundtable not to reopen the Select Committee recommendations, or that the FAA wouldn't be here to participate if they did. And we really want the FAA's participation at these meetings. And also just suggest that we utilize the FAA more thoroughly when they're here. We have technical people here today that have hardly had any input at this lengthy meeting, and it'd be great to utilize them more.
Thank you very much. That's all the speaker slips I have. Favi, did you still want to speak to number 4? Can we do that at another time? That had to do with the procedure item.
We can do it another time.
Real good. Thank you very much. So at this point, Steve Preminger, did you have anything that you wanted to say? I may have left you out on membership discussion.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good. Appreciate that. So Steve Alverson, review of the roundtable actions taken today.
Very quickly, Madam Chair, the roundtable took 2 actions. One was to agree to extend the budget for 6 months, extend an invitation to San Jose and SFO to participate in the budget process for the roundtable, and to change to a bi-monthly or an every other month schedule as soon as practical. Of course, later it was decided that the roundtable would meet in the October timeframe and discuss the following schedule after that, in particular December. And then separately, the roundtable decided to take action on the October item, that is to skip the September meeting, meet in October, skip the November meeting, and then at the October meeting discuss what the meeting in December might look like, which could be a meeting earlier than the 25th of December. And those were the actions.
Very good. And just so that we didn't have to take any formal action on it, we have also committed, we have created an ad hoc committee to deal with the strategic plan and work program. All right, then with that, at 3:50? 52, okay, thank you. I will adjourn this meeting to October and at the same location, and it is the October 23rd date. Thank you very much for participating today. I appreciate it very much.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.